I would've done my hair.
Yeah, I wish.
I was
I
already
would've
fixed.
I would've grown some hair.
Hi, Greg.
How are you?
How are you? Good to see you.
How are you?
Do you know Peter Crawlin, by the way?
I do very well.
Oh, okay, great. My wife is friends with Peter for a long time. Yeah.
Very good guy.
Yeah. I don't see so much of him since he's moved to where he is now. See less of him.
He's a smart guy too. He's a very bright guy.
Yeah, I generally connect with him about once a year.
I didn't know that. Thanks for sharing that.
How you feeling, Rick?
All right, how are you?
All right, okay, good.
Rick, did you send an email saying you might not make it?
I did.
Yeah.
I'm not feeling great, so
Yeah.
I'll stay in the corner.
You
In the
man
quarantine
camera.
area.
Wait a minute, we shook hands.
I know, I wash my hands a lot, though.
Okay.
You can go wash them. I'll make you feel better.
I'm still,
Oh, that's okay, Greg.
I still like you before you.
Yeah.
I've started to run regressions on a lot of data, and I'm like pulling more and more.
I love that
data.
kind of talk, regressions
Yeah, I
on
love
data.
it. Like,
It's great.
You just call me a nerd.
No, not at all. I'm not mad at you, so. Yes, I really do like that. We should wait for Olga if you want to? You think she's minutes away, or? Okay.
How much time did you allow? I've got.
How much time do people have, let me ask?
So I have to leave at 3:45, so 3:45,
Okay.
I've got an hour.
Okay, and this doesn't have to be the only meeting. We could have a follow-up meeting if we want, so we run out of time.
Is that?
So let's do get started, since you have that time. I was expecting an hour and a half to two, but maybe we can do it in less. Thanks, everyone, for attending. So this is a follow-on to a discussion that we had around Article 20 time, I think, when I think the board, I know I did, and I think other members of the board,
You did.
signaled to developers, the people that had shared these concerns regarding Article 20, the proponents of Article 20, that we take a look at what was really going on with the Scenic Road bylaw and see if there's some things that we can improve to improve the situation in all means possible. So that's what we're here for today. So appreciate your attendance, appreciate your participation.
Can we introduce people, because I don't know who everybody is.
Sure, yeah. So I'm Tony, I'm the chair of the planning board. You want to go?
Alicia Prime, planning
Ema, you town planner?
Rick Goldstein, Keystone Development, done a number of projects in town over a number of years.
Diana Chaplin, real estate agent.
Greg Shea, a local builder in town.
Mario Alanya, I've lived in the town for 30 years, I've been developing in the town for 30 years. Been about 50 houses in the town.
I'm Josh Feinblum. I sit on the Concom, but I'm here as a resident. I live at 528 Glen.
And just in time, Olga.
He's sick.
We're just introducing ourselves.
Hi. Sorry. I'm gonna go over here.
You made it.
Oh, sorry.
And also a
You're not
number of
worried.
stormwater permitting.
Oh, really?
I won't
Oh,
consider
there you
that.
go.
It's tough for 5 years.
Oh,
Since they started.
Olga, we're just introducing ourselves, and it's to you.
And I don't know you, I'm Alicia Prime.
I'm Olga. Sorry. Olga Schulman, 265 Country Drive.
Fantastic, welcome. First of all, I want to thank everybody for attending today.
I'm sorry?
I said I want to thank everyone, including you, for attending today and for your participation. So why don't we step into the agenda as the next item up for bid? Oh, I have the starter goals. Okay, so like I said, the starter goals are to better understand and quantify the concerns from some developers and residents regarding the scenic road reviews, and to explore ways to address these concerns and streamline reviews as much as possible. So, and the agenda. Okay, so, anybody else have any goals that were different than that people want to, is that okay to set for what I just had before? Is that a reasonable thing to try to achieve today?
Mm-hmm.
Is that why people are here? People are here for the donuts or anything else?
The only other thing, Tony, that I
Sure.
suggest adding on that is
Sure.
to be able to, I guess in part, trying to figure out how to do better, or maybe change and alter and modify, going forward for better. It's sometimes helpful to look back and determine whether the existing did what was originally intended anyway. So one of the processes I think to think about going forward is to say, how did we get here a little bit in terms of saying, what was the original intention of the scenic bylaw?
Right.
And has it accomplished what we wanted it to accomplish? And if not, have the times had influence or change that might want to modify it.
Right.
I guess to add to that is just
Do some sort of retrospective.
a little retrospective.
Okay, gotcha. So maybe we do that a little bit real time when EMI's going through things, if there are assignments we want to bring to EMI or others, that'd be great. So a little retrospective view on, have we delivered on the promise of the scenic road bylaw?
Or intention.
Or intention, okay, got it. Okay, move on. So that was reviewing, adjusting the goals, and we'll take a look at the agenda, so I have to be through this real quick. So there's EMI's gonna hit that on the purpose and the process of these reviews and the bylaw. And then we wanted to hear all the related concerns. I know the two big concerns that I heard around Article 20 time was the scenic road bylaws having the unintentional consequence of encouraging larger homes on scenic roads than the rest of West End. So, and the other thing that I heard was that what was behind driving that was that the cost of doing this reviews was forcing people to tend to build larger homes on scenic roads than otherwise would be built. So I wanted to see both of all, is the data really showing that? And regardless of whether the data is showing exactly that, is there something that we can do to reduce the cost of doing these reviews and still maintain, the purpose of the reviews, right? And all the quality that's implied there. Okay, so we were gonna stop in a minute, hear those concerns, and then we wanted to review all supporting data, and I think that might take a while. So EMI has a stack of data that he's gonna show to you, that I've reviewed briefly, that shows that that's the assertion is not necessarily true, but I just want to show it to you guys and have you react. And I think you have other data that might show your assertion's true about leading to larger homes and it's too expensive. And again, regardless of what the data shows, I think we should still brainstorm on ways to address these concerns. And then once we do all that, if we get through all that, then I'd like to, if the list might be null, but let's see if we can come up with a list to try to address these concerns and try to improve the situation. So does that seem like an okay way to step through things?
Very good.
Okay, great. So I thought, now let's just go through
We
the
got 1 second, please.
EMI, couple slides.
Yep, couple slides. I think most of you all, know this already, but just so we can have it like fresh to refer to. This is basically the language that requires scenic road review, site plan approval for properties abutting the scenic road. A couple places to highlight in here is newer replacement, what sections it refers to, the dates, and bounding on a scenic road. So newer replacement, that relies on whether the building is substantially demolished, take away more than 51% of the existing, encapsulate more than 51% of the existing, take away more than 75% of the roof. The section 6F2, that's just the dimensional standards, meet the setbacks, meet the heights, that the building otherwise has to do that. October 29th, 1998 that's the trigger date. So anything new after that date is going to be subject to review. If you do additions to anything existing before that date, it doesn't fall under review. Bounding on the scenic road, as most of you know, means any part of the lot that is touching the scenic road. And we recently fixed a loophole in that. And then lastly is then, which are the scenic roads? And there's an important distinction here to make. This scenic roads are listed in the definitions of the bylaw, and that's different than the Article 23 scenic roads. For the most part, they overlap, but there are notable differences in that.
Do you recall the notable differences, by the way?
So the notable differences are basically the number of routes. So South Ave,
Okay.
Boston Post
Yes.
Road, and
Okay, because those are state.
And 117.
the 117, yeah.
We just kind of discovered that in the last year.
Yeah, so those,
But aside from that, but from that point, it should be noted on the opposite side of the coin, they were pretty much identical prior to that, just as a footnote.
yeah, there was a time when they actually were erroneously added in.
Yeah, I
That
think
was
there was
correct.
one town meeting about a year ago that got fixed. Is that
Yeah.
right? Yes,
Yeah.
I recall, yeah.
So process basics, we have a pretty extensive list of required drawings. We start everything off with an intake meeting where you meet with me and our consultants, Dave and Kim. We give you our comments then, what we think of the project. Hopefully that's helpful as a first pass to you know, start steering the project in a direction that's gonna make approval, you know, a more efficient process. Site visit is, you know, that's the first pass that you usually hear from the board, and hopefully that refines the project further to where you come to a public hearing and it should be pretty much a, you know, you've gone through a few rounds, and by the public hearing, it's pretty, you're basically saying how you've responded to concerns, and the decision follows from there. This is the list of the required drawings. As you can see, you know, it's pretty detailed, and, you know, we do want a lot of, you know, refined information. The ones I know particularly I put up here is things like, you know, your plot plan, we do want it, you know, show existing conditions rather well. It has to have topography, site sections, landscape plans have to be well developed, and we need a neighborhood context board. Then as for the data, here's,
Let's stop for a second, because let's return to your thought of the purpose of the scenic road bylaw to begin with, right? So did you have some thoughts about that you wanted to share, like?
Well, I'm not an expert
Yeah,
on
right.
it, but it seems as though when the implementation of the original law was made, it was in response to mega mansions, if you want to call it, you know, supersizing that was
Right.
going on in town. And I think if you go back and you find the origins of that, in fact, I'm happy to help them doing that, but I've talked to Imai about it as well. I think you'll find that was the primary alerting factor at the time.
Right,
People
right.
were just, you know, overcome by the fact that, you know, mega mansions were being built. And I look to that as being the primary driver. I think when you do
Right,
something.
right. You
rational-
mean back in 1997?
Back in 1997, 1998, when it came
I
to
understand.
respect. And so when you
You
look at
think,
that.
you think the driver was to prevent the big mansions on scenic roads?
316 Wellesley Street specifically.
We actually
Okay,
know
got it.
that it was the driver.
There's also some semantics, it's not just the McMansions. I think when I was just reading some stuff from the town website, some of the archives, and it's specifically the size of the homes in relation to the size of the plots that were being built on as
Right,
well.
right, right,
Was another concern that they had.
right. So you think it was less or more than to preserve the scenic nature of the scenic roads? You think it was more,
No, I think it was.
No, it was
Is
my
it-
mansions.
was more
We
slow or
were at
stop
those
or
meetings.
discourage
Because
the
it was
McMansions?
about the scenic roads.
But are you saying that's in the words of the bylaw, or are you saying that that's what the voters saw when they voted for it?
That's what they were voting on.
But they were voting
We
for
were at those
no
meetings when they
McMansions.
were making the law, yeah.
Right, understood.
So, can I add, I think if it was really about the scenic roads themselves, this law would have been designed and written to affect everyone on the scenic road, whether they're building a new house or not, because there are people on scenic roads that clear cut 2/3 of their property, and,
Without building, correct.
without building, you know, just, someone just buys a house and
Right,
fixes
right.
it up, and those people can put big additions and can have, you know, they can do anything they want with landscaping, additions.
You're saying your landscaping is not monitored?
Well,
is-
when this
No,
scenic,
that's-
when it got proposed at first.
No, but I'm
it
supporting
was
your argument,
it
I'm
was
trying to understand, you're
gradually-
saying, since
gradually-
the landscaping is not monitored, and we're only monitoring homes, you know, when they're changed, substantially changed, it's not really just about
That's
the
not-
scenic road.
That's
Correct.
not what.
Right, that's
yeah,
your
but,
point,
But
yeah.
Mario, that's not what the intent was. It wasn't the intent, because you are monitoring landscaping.
Well, he's saying we're not for
No,
homes
you
that
are.
don't change.
I think you're misunderstanding, because I know what he's saying, we've been saying it for a while, but I think you're misunderstanding.
He just
what he's saying.
said he understood what I said.
I don't know if he truly understood what you were saying to him. Because, no, seriously, because what, we've been through this so many times that sometimes it's very, very
I'm
often.
actually supporting his point of view, so.
Yeah, I think it's
Can I
more
just-
of
He
an
wasn't
anti-development.
he wasn't indeed
bylaw.
saying.
So right now as a homeowner, I can do whatever I want on my
Yeah,
own.
that's what he's saying.
Like, that's what
Yeah.
he's saying, he's agreeing with that.
No, you can't.
No, I
you
can
cannot
as
do
a,
whatever you want.
that is,
Is it 20 foot?
I am-
No.
There's a 20
No,
foot.
but that's for everybody, not
That's-
just
that's-
scenic
on
roads.
scenic roads?
On scenic roads,
Only on
there's a
scenic
20
roads.
No,
foot.
I know, but when you, on scenic roads, in terms of being, you're saying It's 20 feet for scenic road, but that's for the whole state, that's the way the whole state abides by it.
No, our
Scenic
bylaws.
What's
scenic
this
roads.
20-foot
This is-
thing that
So you're not talking about the zoning bylaw anymore,
We're
you're talking about the scenic road
scenic
bylaw.
roads.
Are we talking about the, sorry, which, are we talking about the
Which
scenic
bylaw?
roads?
So the zoning bylaw. is
Greg
what
brought
we
it
just
up,
spoke
Greg
about.
wanted to bring up, let's go back to the original intent of the scenic road bylaw.
Of
What
of
was
the
the int-
zoning, of the amendment to the zoning bylaw.
Can I ask you,
No, we're not talking about the amendment,
We're
is
right?
talking about
rewriting
the
the scenic road bylaw on the table, or are we just talking about how the scenic bylaw is being applied?
I don't know what's on the
Starting-
table, we're
we're
just talking
starting
about the
with this
situation.
one.
There were
Because,
concerns about the scenic road bylaw that you guys have that we wanna listen to. We wanna understand the basis of those concerns and see if we can do
Right,
something
but is-
about
is the
it.
basis
Whether
of
it's
it
any
how-
change to the scenic road bylaw or not, you know.
So the reason I responded the way I
Sure.
responded was your reaction to what he was saying is that you're not controlling enough.
No, I'm not, I don't wanna control anymore, don't worry.
He's saying
It's
was
not
that
on the
you're
table.
controlling too much of a wrong thing.
No, I'm not
So
saying,
that's what
you're
I'm trying to
misinterpreting
explain.
me. You think I'm,
I clearly
Wanna
heard
control
Tony,
more.
I clearly heard Tony say, Tony said that, Mario, you are correct, your point has some validity to it, because basically his point was, it's not it was just about the scenic roads.
right.
It was just about the scenic roads, it would be applying to everybody in terms of the.
I agree with
and
that.
so,
Yeah,
I
right,
think
right,
that's all
right.
that Tony was saying.
Can,
Right, yeah.
can I ask a question? What you just put up is from our zoning bylaw,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
We distinctly have a different bylaw, which is called the scenic road bylaw.
Yes, we do, yeah.
General.
Yeah,
Right?
That's Article 23, and
That's
it
a
is
different
different.
bylaw.
Yeah.
That's different. So
Yes.
the regulation within 20 feet of,
right.
That's
that is the scenic road bylaw, not the zoning bylaw.
Yes,
Correct.
right.
What
yeah.
does that say? Within 20 feet of the right of way or the
It's-
side?
No, of
It is the right.
any
So
street.
the right of way.
yeah.
Yeah.
So on your property, there's no 20 feet.
But once I'm
She was
inside of my,
She was getting a general reference.
once I'm inside my stone wall.
From the
From the road.
From the
right?
pavement.
Depending on-
Your,
From the
your
right of
boundary,
way,
your boundaries of your
Yeah,
property.
why don't you just update people as far as
So
what
there's
the
a,
numbers
there's
are.
an overlay
The-
Yes.
sort of.
the
Yes,
zoning law, the
absolutely. I
scenic
have
road
to
bylaw.
yield to that.
Okay, so-
Let's let Imai bring us back together
I
on
don't
the
see
basics
that
here.
in
Yes.
it.
Okay, so the scenic road bylaw basically is what triggers, in the zoning bylaw, section 5, B2, or section 5 in the uses, that's what triggers site plan approval. And that's abutting a scenic road, as defined in the zoning bylaw. Article 23 is a different matter. Article 23 is basically controlling stone walls, trees within the right of way, and whether or not you get to you can remove them or not. They're both planning board processes, they're both called scenic roads, but one is about the house you're building, the other is about trees and stone walls. That's.
Right.
Can you clarify this 20-foot thing?
I don't know this 20-foot thing,
I've never heard of
but
that.
yeah.
It's a state scenic road as far as I know.
The state scenic road applies to the right of way. It says within the right of way.
The
Okay.
first 20 feet of a property on the
Of a
scenic
property.
road
Never heard of
are
that.
part of the purview of the scenic road bylaw.
Nah, I've never
I
heard
haven't, I'm
No,
sorry, I
I-
haven't heard that.
That's not my understanding of
Yeah.
it, because but anyway,
Yeah.
if that's Article 23, that's not what we're talking about today.
But that's okay,
If
but
it-
it's, they're talking about,
Well,
The
that's
whole
why
scenic
when
road.
people on scenic roads have trees that they wanna remove within 20 feet, within the first 20 feet, have to come before the scenic road committee to have them removed.
I don't think it's
Only if
exactly
they're
the 20.
triggered by, only if that review is triggered by construction of a new
No,
house.
actually,
No,
that-
no,
if
no.
there's a
She's saying, yeah,
tree-
she's saying the
A tree-
jurisdiction extends broader than we have been
Yeah.
applying it.
Yes,
No.
It's not.
It has nothing to do with building a
It's the right
building,
of way.
she's right. If you have a tree that's in or near the right of way, I think
20
it,
feet, it's 20 feet.
I think it
past-
falls, the canopy falls into the right of way.
yeah, because
is
I would
what
say
it is.
that's
I don't think it's
different.
20 feet.
is not, the
I'm
right of
not
way is not
such
20
an
feet.
expert on this.
I can, it is not, it's, the state law, the reading on it does not have the 20-foot in it.
I was
Yeah,
gonna say,
okay, so I
that's
think it's
bigger
the
than-
canopy falls into
It's
the
I was gonna say
right
the
of way.
right of way
We
was
can
never
going
gone,
right
it
of
never
way.
gone 20 feet,
John-
right of way.
That's great news.
Yeah, because I'm on a scenic road and I've had that thought before and I looked it
I
up.
am too, and I know residents who have come before, to deal with tree situations like on Chestnut Street,
Right, right.
but I
What-
guess they don't have to.
Who would be our best expert in that, you or John Field?
No, I think that's more me, but I mean,
Okay.
John has probably had more
So
time
you're 100%
exercising it.
certain there's no 20-foot rule? It's something.
I'm 99%
You've
certain.
never,
Okay.
you've never enforced a
I've
20
never
foot
enforced
rule.
it, and I've read it, it says within the right of way.
Right, the right of way.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, the canopy falls within the right of way, I think is what it is. The
Well, you
tree-
can trim the canopy in the right of way, but if the tree trunk itself
Is in the right of way.
to have,
Yeah.
to get to remove it, if that tree trunk is itself, and any part of it, you know, like, doesn't have to be the entirety,
Right.
but if
Yeah.
that trunk is in the right of way, then you have to get permission
This is
from
what
the
our
highway.
bylaw specifically says,
Thanks, Josh.
any eligible road or portion of a road designated as a scenic road by vote of the town meeting. The boundary of a scenic road shall be the right-of-way line of such road and shall include anything touching or located on the right-of-way line.
Right, so it's the right of way, it's not.
So, and then there's a definition about like the types of trees and how thick
Right,
they are.
exactly.
Yeah, then there's, yeah, the significant
That's
6
been
inch.
my understanding,
Yeah.
yeah, you just said.
In their defense, as a general rule of thumb, people have thrown out.
I've
Oh,
heard
20
that
feet from
before.
the
I've worried
pavement
about
would
that
work.
before.
I can, yeah, I can say that.
Never saw it, but I've heard it's floated around.
Yeah.
That's been a narrative I've been a part of. We ready to end the meeting now? No, okay. Okay, so, did we have a good enough conversation to talk about the purpose of the bylaws, the scenic road bylaws?
I'd like to add one
Sure.
statement to that, and that I know at the time, I know that it was perhaps triggered by the fear of McMansions on small lots, but it was also, there was a stated concern of townspeople at the time to maintain the so-called historic, semi-rural nature of the town. And so part of it was that that's how the roads were selected, that they were the historic characteristic roads of Weston, and that was.
The most historic,
Yes,
yeah,
the
that's
most
fair.
historic, so there was a historic component to.
So
the
it's fair to say
selection.
there was a mix.
Yes,
Are you okay
correct.
with
Do
that?
we have the old warrant?
Yes,
That's a
you
good
could
one.
get that.
Probably,
They
we
would
do.
have it at
That's a
the,
good
in
one.
town hall.
That's a good one.
Yeah, they would have it in town hall, but that, I do remember that discussion as well.
Okay, and therefore, Greg, since you brought it up, were you thinking, let's say it's an 80-20 mix, whatever, between the McMansions issue and a historical issue, and, you know, the drive-through, is it still scenic? Is it your point that we're saying that that's not being maintained, that's not being preserved, the original intent?
Again, there's factual data and anecdotal data. And
Okay.
anecdotal can be just as strong sometimes
Sure.
as factual. Although in my geek mind, I tend to lay towards the data more. But
Right.
having said that, my contention is, I think if you go and you take a look at both sides of it, from a practical stand-back perspective, you have to come to your own conclusion, but I think it's pretty definitive that it was a miserable failure based on my research and data going back.
Just on the size issue, you're
On the
saying?
size, and so
Okay.
on 80% of it, you get a 0. So in any mathematical
I'm
statistics.
sorry, what's on 80% what?
In his reference to saying the intention of the law was 80%, he was just giving an
oh,
arbitrary.
I just said arbitrary, just coming
Yeah,
to move the
arbitrary.
conversation forward.
If
Got it.
it was 80% there, and then it was 20% for the architectural
I
feel.
see, okay.
If you look at the data for the pure
You
architectural
get 0.
side,
I understand.
The size issue,
The size issue.
yeah, okay.
I
Okay,
think
so let's
it's-
get into the data then. Is that fair?
There's one thing I wanna say, cause I think it's anecdotal, which is, I think, an important component when we're looking at this, is, I bought a home on a scenic road, at the end of 2017. It's got a flat roof, a concrete slab, and a detached garage. It's not a particularly attractive home on the exterior. And
I'm sure it's fine.
Uh,
Sure it's lovely.
yeah, and when I started to look at, various things that I can do and how I want to address it, things started to get really complicated. I started to get conflicting information about what I would do and how that would warrant coming in front of the planning board. And my initial reaction, just talking to my wife, is okay. You know what? Like, when we're ready, we're gonna find a home in Weston that's not on a scenic road. We're gonna buy a home that's ready that we like. We're gonna tear this one down, build as big of a home as we can, and sell it for a profit. That was the conversation that happened with my wife. It's one of the reasons that I was so surprised about the reaction that people were having during the Article 20 discussion. Because for young families that are moving into town, that are picking up older homes on scenic roads, now if I wanna build a home that isn't 6,000 square feet, or I could probably build a 9,500 square foot house because it's on a 2.5 acre plot, right? I'm being disincented from building a modest home on that plot because I like it. Because for me, I don't wanna have to come back to a board if I wanna change my landscaping,
Mhm.
right? That's a personal preference. right? I'm busy. I don't build homes, I build tech companies, so if I have a free weekend and I wanna go to Home Depot and do something, right? Like the notion that I'm gonna have to now, in perpetuity forever, come back to like an overseeing
So
body.
your concern was not the original review? Your
It's the
concern
deed
is the
restrictions.
ongoing review?
I
The
have- I
ongoing,
have-
the monitoring, let's
I
call
have,
it.
I have concerns, I have concerns for both because I purchased a property, like, I can accomplish what I want if I tear down 49% of my house and build 49% of a new structure the way I like it. And I can basically play Tetris, which was not the original information I got, but my co-founder's a real estate attorney, and he read our bylaw, and it's very clear that it says existing structure.
Yeah, look at 9 Newton Street, it's perfect.
And so now, what you've created is a situation where if I wanna keep a plot of land, like, I basically have to just like stagger this out so I don't substantially demolish a home. So if I wanna
Right.
pitch that completely flat roof, right? Like that, to me, the notion that I have to come in front of a planning board and go, give you that checklist of stuff to pitch a flat roof, that does not bring any aesthetic appeal to Glen Road. It's just counterintuitive. And so like, I'm just kind of sharing this because this is one anecdote. I'm not the only person, as I've talked to other people around town that have encountered this.
Right.
And so while it might not be represented in the data, there are people, citizens in town, that don't wanna generate a profit off of building homes that are struggling with the implications that this bylaw has.
And if the implications were fixed, however, what would happen?
He would put up a nice roof on a house that he likes.
And I wouldn't get to sell the house when he moves to the new one.
Right.
And sell him the new house.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But he would be
I mean-
staying in a
Yes.
smaller
I-
house, on his own property with the roof that he likes, without deed restrictions for the rest of his life.
So my general, like my personal approach when I was initially buying a plot of land, because I'll be honest, I read the Scenic Road bylaw and I'm on Concom because I tried to read Wetland Protection Act and I didn't understand a word of it, and I sat down for 4 hours with Michelle and started to learn about it. So I did my best to even educate myself on what it meant, and then when I bought the home, I didn't read the entire zoning bylaw to catch this, right? And so now I own this plot of land where in my mind, it's a 3,500 square foot home with a detached garage. I was probably gonna build a 4,500 square foot single level, maybe like, 3/4 of it single level and then, same roof line. Like, I was thinking about things like that, right? And for me, like, just, I'm not gonna wanna live on a plot of land with those restrictions.
What did you do, by the way?
I haven't done anything yet.
Oh, you haven't done anything,
Yeah.
okay.
I need to sell my company and I'll.
Right, okay, gotcha.
So,
You haven't done anything to this house you're describing, or you haven't bought another house?
Internally, no.
Okay, got it, understood.
I know we haven't started talking about it yet.
We're in,
Defining the issue.
raising concerns,
Yeah.
yeah, right, yeah.
Okay, so I had an idea on how to
Oh,
deal
you're
with
into
something.
a solution already?
Well, not so much
Okay.
solutions, but
Okay.
it's something that I've thought about for a long time.
Okay, but I wanna hear, I want to see all the pain, what.
Well, but what Josh,
what are
what
the-
Josh is describing is actually the unintended consequence of a good idea. I mean, that's exactly what happens when people who put up a law don't understand the way the market and life works. I mean, that's exactly what happened
Well,
because
it may not be that they didn't understand because they
no, they
truly-
didn't understand how, because we were sitting there yelling that it's not going to work that way, it's going to work exactly the way it's working.
But there's,
And they didn't want to listen
but
at
there
the
was good
time.
intention, I'm sure.
The intention was great,
Sure.
and everybody wanted these mansions not to be mansions. They wanted to keep the bucolic look, but the problem is when you make it so prohibitively expensive to do it, only rich people will be able to handle it. So they come in with very big attorneys, very big everything, and they built these big houses, which people like Josh wouldn't
I
want
mean,
to have.
I've built a house.
But, okay, but
Yeah.
let me
Sorry.
stop for a
But you
second,
require
so just to,
I mean, the
just to-
list of documents that you require
That's what I'm
is
talking about.
far in excess of what I need to get a building permit.
right, so I
Exactly.
wanted, that's what we're gonna get to, we're gonna get to the cost of doing review
It's
versus the
insane.
cost of building
It's
a house. What
absolutely
what
insane.
additional is required to you, and I'd like to get to the dollars and cents of it, and
It's-
see if we can address
It's
some of
not
that.
just about the dollars and
But let me
cents.
talk for just a minute,
Yeah, sorry.
okay? So, if I were to take all this in and agree with people 100%, then it seems like the conclusion would be, therefore on scenic roads, the houses are much larger than on other roads, because of this
The
dynamic.
new houses.
The new house.
The new
The new
houses,
construction,
exactly.
yeah.
But that would be a conclusion that I would draw. So, we did that study, and it turns out,
Let's see it.
yeah, we did that study, and it shows that,
Wait, bigger than other houses in town would.
Non-
This is on non-scenic
Scenic roads versus non-scenic roads.
Yeah, I would say you wouldn't reach that conclusion.
No, you
because
wouldn't
if
reach that conclusion.
No, but you're saying it's great, what you're telling me is creating a dynamic, for example, like his and others, I'm sure you have, that is forcing people to build larger homes on scenic roads than they would otherwise.
But it's not just-
Therefore,
it's
on
not-
non-scenic roads, we should not see that happening.
I
And
disagree.
we're saying the
Happy
same
to tell you
thing,
why if anyone
this
wants.
data is showing the same thing on both, so
You
it
can't-
leads me, I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm not,
I'm happy to
No, no, no,
respond.
I'm not trying to
But the data-
agree here or disagree with
We
you.
can-
No,
The
you
data
can-
support-
we can't
I'm
argue
telling
data,
you.
Tom. We can argue
I'm
data.
I'm telling you
But we can
things.
let him finish.
Can I just
But
tell
no,
you-
I wasn't done.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's okay.
That's fair.
You would lead to conclude that scenic roads would be larger than non-scenic roads, and they're equivalent. So it leads me to conclude that it's more market forces than
Correct.
is being acknowledged here. So the market is encouraging people on all roads to build bigger homes.
No.
That's
Well,
what,
No.
oh, since '97, when the law was
We need
built.
to look at the
It's
data.
not, it's not,
That's not what's
I wouldn't, I agree with
So-
you that
but
you
let- go
wouldn't
ahead,
reach
go
that
ahead. He's-
conclusion.
You're correct, it's the market. You've
Okay.
reached a price point in town where land has become so expensive, you cannot afford to buy it and build a modest house.
Right, you've got to get your returns back on square foot.
But
Yeah,
the
I mean,
house-
It's so much per
that-
square foot period, so you have to
Correct.
put
I mean,
more square feet in.
Real estate trades on square foot.
Right,
That's what the market trades on, quality of construction, level finishes, every broker, everyone who markets anything, price per square foot. That's what
Okay.
everybody trades on.
Tommy, even
Yes.
though I don't know what the data is, and we have to look at it, so I can't.
Yeah, he's gonna go in a minute,
I can't
yeah.
refute it. But if you look at the other side of the coin again, on exactly what you said there,
yes.
okay, and the
That's
exact,
right.
so take that point as a given in terms of the thing. There's clearly then not a disincentive, and if there's a clear.
I was gonna say that, I was gonna acknowledge that you would think that if things were working right, scenic road, the house should be smaller, right?
No,
That's
but
fair.
My point, no, but my point is.
So it's not working. So-
It's not working, but it
Yeah.
also, even if the data is equal, if you have equal
Right,
data,
yes,
okay,
yeah,
in terms
that's
of,
fair.
in terms of
That's
the-
what
you
it is.
should be on a scenic road. You would wanna be, you're trying, if the original region was to have smaller homes, and the original intent.
You're not getting smaller homes,
You are clearly not getting smaller.
right,
homes.
yeah. So I'll
there
acknowledge
should
that.
almost be an
Okay,
incentive.
You're
Yeah, but
acknowledging,
if you incentivize
My
that,
calendar.
you're damaging his property value.
come
There
again?
is more to
Well,
If
that's why the
if you
people in
create a
Kansas
set of
doesn't work.
criteria to incentivize smaller houses, you're
Yes.
hurting his property value.
There is more
That's why
to
they
it
didn't
than
vote
that.
for it.
No, but you should at least give the opportunity.
That's one,
for people to be able to do
issue,
it.
I agree, if people voted to do that, that's an issue, but
Well,
if we're not accomplishing what the bylaws intended to do, forgetting about his property value for a minute, then that's.
Well,
I'm just saying, if people vote in a way that decreases your property value for a greater good somehow, then that's okay, that's what the public voted
It doesn't
for.
affect.
Yeah, let me know when that happens.
Yeah.
There
But
is,
if it's not achieving the overall goal, that's what my
there is
larger issue.
more to it than new houses. There is more to it than the property value of an existing or a new, improved new home. The way it works with this law, and why did you buy it on your street? Why did you buy your house?
I bought my house because I love ranchers and there's not a lot of ranchers here and it was in the part of Weston I wanted to live in.
Okay. Did you look at any other houses in parts of Weston that you wanted to live in that were not on the scenic road?
Sure, but I didn't understand the implications.
No,
of it.
never mind
Yeah, I looked
whether
all,
you understand.
I looked all over the place.
Correct. Did you find houses of similar value on not scenic roads?
You should,
Why don't you make your point?
yeah, I like
This
this.
is-
Because
you
I
want this
just,
one.
you bought this house because it was less expensive.
But also he said he wanted a ranch, and there are very few ranches.
But make your point,
Yeah.
make your point.
The
What's your
point
point?
is, I have seen, in the last 20 years, I have seen devaluation of scenic roads, older homes.
This is true, like Priscilla Hindmarsh, I'm sure you know her, I bought her home and she was losing her mind because she couldn't sell this house. She
Yeah,
was
so-
initially asking 1.4 and I offered 1.
So it was
But that's-
devalued.
Right, that's very anecdotal.
It is very
Right,
anecdotal.
That's
Know
not,
what the house
no.
is like, maybe it's deteriorating, you know.
But if it wasn't on a
Good
scenic road, you
negotiator.
would have had to pay more for it.
Maybe, I don't know.
Well,
I
we
don't
know
that we-
because we,
What, do we have data to back up the
That would be an
Clarification.
interesting, that would be an interesting.
I mean, I would be
research.
interested in looking at that data to say
Yeah,
is,
that's all day long, that data, I mean, that's, look at what lots sell for on non-scenic roads
Yeah,
relative to what they sell
similar
for
lots
scenic
on
roads.
non-scenic roads.
do you
would
have
be-
that data?
It,
You have
it
that
can
data.
be put
The data's
together,
in the
it's
sales.
in the
No, I-
sales.
you don't have data
Put
today.
it together, you'll see, but what I'm saying is, the older homes with
You're
scenic
saying
roads-
you could come up with data that would show scenic road lots, basically, are less valuable than non-scenic road lots.
1.3 for the
That's
Black
true,
Oak property,
and we don't
1.5
know
for
if
the
you've
10.
devalued, we don't know if you've devalued scenic road
But-
lots, or if you've increased the value of non-scenic
Exactly,
road.
exactly.
We don't know which one, it's
Exactly.
relative to
You've
each
done
other.
some-
Where did you come up with that? I want, before you
Who's
claim
this
that it's
looking
the truth.
We're
come up with
constantly
the data?
searching,
I've
we're
never
constantly
seen that.
Mario,
searching.
just talk about your Black Oak and your.
No, I would like to see.
Those are
No, I
anecdotal.
No
want
one- no one has
anecdotal
come up
stuff.
with the
I'm
data.
very interested in the spreadsheet, if someone has a spreadsheet, no one has it today, is that right? I would love to see a spreadsheet of that data that shows overall the value of lots
You know,
on scenic
Tony,
road
we've
is
done
lower than
a
non-scenic.
spreadsheet
Spreadsheet,
probably,
please.
we've
I don't
done,
have that spreadsheet,
But
you
you
guys.
can create it.
you can
right?
easily create.
Well,
we've
well,
done a
that's-
spreadsheet.
The
Well,
problem
no,
is
then you have to take into
statistics can
account
tell
the
all
house
different
and-
stories, and statistics will tell all different stories. Even before this bylaw, I think neighborhood lots were worth more than main road lots.
Exactly.
Yeah,
But-
it's apples and
But
oranges.
it has
Right.
affected it,
It
it
That's
has
a,
affected
that's a
it.
good point.
No, but it has.
They're cut through, I mean, they're.
It has affected
It
the
has.
days on market, it has
Yeah.
affected the price of the.
No, I would like to
property.
take some roads off, maybe, I guess if you put 117 on there, for example.
Yeah, or
Route
Wellesley
30.
Street.
The
So I would
property
strip
was
out
bond. That
the
was-
connector
families
roads.
were afraid
Yeah.
of that.
If I stripped out the connector roads, I'd be interested in the data.
Tony, this is a person who, in the last 20 years, has seen practically every house in town, sold,
Right.
bought, whatever.
But okay,
Right.
he does have a good, if we all agree, anecdotally, everyone around the table here.
You
would
honestly,
say,
I mean-
yes, absolutely, the values have gone down. I agree, I'd say too, but the data would, they don't,
If
no one has
Two
the
Fields
data.
Pond had not been on the scenic road, you would not have gotten it for, how much did you pay? $8.30, $8.20?
740.
Oh, there you go.
But what were they asking originally, $9.95?
Because that's
And
what
no
it
one
would
wanted
cost
I know, but
somewhere
guys,
else.
guys, we all know it to be true. That's fine and dandy,
But
but
Tony
no.
doesn't. That's what
Well,
he's
he's
asking.
Well, I don't
No,
know
but he
that
did,
it's
he was
the truth,
asking.
you know anecdotal truth, you know
Right,
what I'm
we're,
saying?
all we know is the anecdote,
Look at
he's
my
asking
brother.
for the factual.
But you
Well,
can't,
I'm
you
giving you-
can't, it's
Tell me you don't
also
have
an
it.
issue
They
of
don't have it.
apples
They don't
and
have it.
oranges though, because you have to also recognize that traffic has increased exponentially in Weston in the past 20 years. And almost all of these scenic roads are roads that suffer from traffic. And so you could also say that
Traffic, yeah.
they're,
That's why you wanna strip out 117, for example.
You
We're
Right,
also 22
exactly.
years into this bylaw, so the fact that the market forces have already weighed onto the property value doesn't necessarily mean that that's wrong. Right?
Alicia,
I don't know
I
that's a
would
reason
agree
that
with
the
you
bylaw should
completely.
change.
It's the bylaws playing
Traffic.
for it, I guess.
Even if it was, that might be okay.
let all those.
So Alicia, I agree
Yeah.
completely about the traffic. The only fly in the ointment here,
Mhm.
those McMansions for $10 million that plop themselves there, don't seem to be worried about that same traffic. So, you know, all this stuff would actually be true if the people were not putting $8-10 million
How
houses.
many McMansions have there been since 97?
Well, what do you call
On
them,
scenic roads,
what are you
yeah.
calling them, McMansion?
Yeah.
Something that's gone through.
Yeah.
Can I suggest for own
7,
consideration
8,
that
9,000 square
Yeah.
feet.
it's unequivocal that the scenic road designation is a negative to the attractiveness or value of a property?
Of the land.
I don't know that, I mean, on a scenic road.
I think
so-
everyone at this
do.
table will
We
tell
do.
you that.
We do.
It's unequivocal. As a.
To
as
be
a-
on a scenic road
For
subtracts
land.
value from the property.
For me as a developer,
Yes, right.
to look at a lot that's on a scenic road versus a lot that isn't.
Yeah, I can see that, that would
I
be
have
Wait,
to choose
well,
a
how
lot
a
that's
developer-
on
And why is it? Why is it negative?
Because it costs
Time and
so much.
money.
It costs so much more to do.
Time and money.
Oh, you mean just, empty
Costs
piece
more
of-
time and money to deal with
Empty
the
piece of
scenic
land,
road.
you're saying, versus a house?
No, even the house that you have to renovate.
No matter what you do to it.
Yeah,
It-
even
it-
anything you wanna renovate.
Well, no, if you do
The
minor
scenic-
renovations, it's not an issue, so what's?
You don't
Right,
have to go.
exactly.
Well,
You
yeah.
can't do minor
So
renovations.
you're saying if you're planning a major renovation?
Or
or a
new
new
construction,
house.
or new construction.
Okay, so,
Unequivocally,
and how much?
Between
That's-
1.3
that's-
and 1.5, it's, there's.
See the
easy-
You're saying
percentage.
10%?
Yeah.
No,
Like
that-
on the
that-
corner
that's
of
harder
Lawrence
to-
and Pine,
harder
to- So that's-
1.3.
That's
That's
one
fine.
set of arguments, saying you're devaluing scenic road homes and lots, that's one thing.
And making.
But you guys were saying earlier that you're encouraging larger homes.
You know what I just said?
Those are two different
both.
things.
No,
They're
that's
two
not, it's the
different-
end of
they're
your
two different
sentence. You're
It's-
devaluing the houses and you're making them big, you're devaluing the land.
But I don't,
value and
okay,
you're
I'm
making the
not
houses
completely
bigger.
sold, I'm very interested in data, and
We have
that
to
you
do
guys
that.
are all saying it is very important. I'd still like to see data
Did
on the
you do
first
data
point.
on it?
Well, let's.
And then the
Well,
second
yeah,
point,
I can't, I don't think anyone here can give you that data. I can tell you that, you know, your professional fees to deal with the scenic road bylaw.
no, I'm just talking about the value, I just stop at the value.
It would be an impossible analysis to do because you're gonna get into so many other factors like traffic, like neighborhoods. Well, there's a million things, so.
Okay, but then is it, okay, so,
No,
I think
there is data that can be achieved.
you're here to do it today, I think, because you feel like that
Are we
the
debating?
review is to blame for the lower value. That's why you're here today, I think.
Well, no, I thought we were, I didn't think we were here today to re-debate the scenic road bylaw. I thought that's a foregone conclusion. I thought we were here today to
No,
talk about
I think
how
all
we-
things are on the table, I don't
Let
want
him
to
hear
take
what,
anything off the table.
what you said you were here for?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're tilting at windmills. I think the scenic road bylaw exists and it's gonna exist, and I thought we were here today to talk about
Well,
how it might be.
It might not.
don't assume that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I don't
I'm
want to
more
make
cynical
empty
than you guys. I
promises,
don't
I'm
think
just
it's
saying,
all
we said we were going to come here
There's there's
open-minded.
been pieces taken out, and there haven't been actions taken to the next degree, so just.
I mean, if we
I-
can sharpen the
very
scenic
clear.
road bylaw in a way that,
I thought we were
So
here today
Tony,
to.
better.
can I just
and I'm
have,
not, neither of us speak for the planning board yet.
Okay,
We're-
this guy hasn't been allowed to finish his thoughts since we started.
Yeah, I
Just
mean,
an
that's-
observation.
that's-
I got other
Like,
stuff to
let's
do.
finish.
That's,
So-
that's fair.
I thought we were here today to talk about how the scenic road bylaw might be applied in a more efficient way so that it would be basically
So
more
we can shortcut,
palatable.
if people want to do that, we can do that today. We can go
I
right
thought
to-
that's what we were here for. If we're here to discuss, you know, the merits of the scenic road bylaw.
You guys tell me. You-
I would suggest to you that anytime you decide to become arbiters of good taste, you're going down an incredibly slippery slope. But you've already gone down that path a long time ago.
But
Like, when you start to
wait,
decide
wait,
what
you-
looks good at my
Let's stop at your
house.
first point, as far as the meeting today. Do people want to just fast forward and start talking about, rather than any change to the bylaw or any larger issue, do you want to get down to tightening up reviews?
Well,
Yeah.
is the planning board open to like learning from data and recommending changes to the bylaw? for
I am,
instance?
I'm not saying all the planning board
You can't
is.
speak for the board.
Can the board do that, or is it a town meeting
Of course, it's a
process?
town
Well, it's a town meeting process, but the
If the
board
board,
would
if the
take
board
up.
gets behind it, the town will.
Yeah.
If we were compelled
Well, it also
to say-
depends on what the change is.
Yeah, exactly,
If
I mean,
the
if,
planning board recommends it, then the town typically goes with what. they
and
do.
Yeah.
honestly, the board is the one, if Mario would remember, and I'm sure you would remember, and I don't know, guys, if you were there in 98, 99, I don't, no, if you were at those meetings, but, at the time when they created the bylaw was, and the list of rules was much, much, much smaller and simpler. These rules were growing in the last 20 years, and that they were created within the planning board, and they were decided on without town approval, without any votes. This was just rules and rules and rules.
so would you guys like to go to that discussion then, rather than?
Well, I think that the
Any grades
general
now?
language of the bylaw hasn't changed, it's just the rules
The
and
implementation-
regulations.
the implementation of bylaws.
And the conditions and the, perpetual things have been growing.
How about we?
And-
And you actually see that when you guys are reviewing older properties that are coming back and
Yeah.
triggering
Yeah,
review, you're
that's
like,
true.
oh, look at the olden days, when you
Yeah.
didn't need a well, and you didn't need to have dark sky compliant lighting, and you go on and on with stuff that you are brand new to these older approved sites.
And they didn't have any of that, and those, at that time, I remember when they first started implementing the law, at that time, quite a few people went through the planning board process without any issues, and they didn't think to avoid it.
But
This was something that began,
Yeah,
it started as avoidance issue, maybe 5, 6, maybe when, what's his name left?
Roger Lee,
Yeah,
Kate
what-
Deverell.
yeah, well, no, the old inspector, what's his name?
Oh,
Courtney.
yeah.
When Courtney left, after that, it started going,
Yeah,
you know,
because they started
like a
going up to-
snowball.
Yeah, because they were, what the planning board was doing, because you may not remember or have been paying, out of hindsight of being mindful of it or whatever, was that 144 Beaver went through and all of a sudden the planning board decided that you could review the property to what it was before it existed, before the house was built. So 144 Beaver had a roof, you could now look at it before that was there, you could put it back to before anything had happened to the property. That caused a lot of problems.
So,
Yeah.
Well, that was a lawsuit.
That was a lawsuit, and it was an interpretation. In fact, the land court judge said that the rules that by which we interpret in our town are so archaic that he was remiss in deciding the case in that respect, but he had to do it because of the way the rules are written.
Tony, I
Okay,
think if
so-
you-
So I wanna be productive with you guys' time, I mean, you're here, I'm here
To answer
to
your
help
question
think things through
directly.
with you. Go ahead.
To answer your question directly, if we had determined, and I'm not saying we determined it totally, but if on 80%, as you put it, it didn't accomplish the negative, the McMansion issue. If on 80%, we score a 0. And on the remaining 20%, let's just give it 100% for the, in terms of the aesthetic value
Right,
of this.
right.
So, we come out to an average here right now of 20% successful on the accomplishment goals. That would probably not lead you to say we should jump into not changing the rules, but that you should end up considering. So my answer to your question, should we just jump forward and start going through process in terms of these things? We can go ahead and do that. It's going to be I think it's really averting what the big issue is, though, if you really go to what your primary premise is.
And what's the big issue?
The big issue is if 80% of the law was invoked to be able to solve McMansions.
So do you think the law should be changed, or do you think the implementation of the law should be
I
changed?
think when you look at it from I think the law could very easily be changed. Could very easily be changed. You literally, in the scenic road bylaw, and you accomplish both things. You simply exempt any small home review. It's
But
that easy.
if you do that, then it becomes just like any other road,
No.
right? That's what you're saying.
Yeah.
Oh, for
Yeah,
small
for small
houses,
houses.
yeah.
For small houses.
You're
What
encouraging
would you
small
call
houses.
small, just so we're
Well,
on the same part
there's a
here?
definition for small and large home review.
I'm asking you
in town.
though, what you would call small, just so we know what we're talking about
The definition in the zoning bylaw.
here. Okay.
Which is.
Under 3,500?
No,
Greg.
it's per size of lot.
It's 10%
It's
of the
10%.
Right, so you're just
Well,
saying.
no, it's also, I'm throwing out 3,500 because that's the bottom number.
Yes.
And I know
Yeah, so
it's
it's
substantial.
10% or up to
So
6,000
you're saying just
square
remove
feet.
the whole concept, remove the bylaw completely?
No, I'm not. No,
No,
because on
but
scenic
if it's
road-
like any other road, then why have it scenic road bylaw?
There's a middle ground where you could
Because the
also
original
reduce-
intention of the law was 80% driven towards McMansions.
No, I'm just
which we're
saying,
talking.
you're saying that it doesn't apply to smaller homes. Well, we don't review smaller homes anyway on all other roads, and we only review big homes. So what's there between the scenic and a non-scenic?
Because you're not, if you review
There's-
small
there is-
homes on scenic
So you're
roads-
saying, I'm saying pull out the scenic road.
If you are
review.
abiding by the laws on the scenic road laws, you are still subject to the general bylaw laws of the state on that, and you take away an arbitrary, unnecessary, review for people who are trying, and we
Right.
want to encourage
So
small
you're
home
saying,
review.
for the sake of reviewing new homes, let's just say, there would be no difference between scenic roads and non-scenic roads?
For small home review.
For any?
No, he's saying, I thought you were proposing just take the small homes, and that's what I'm struggling to
Yeah,
get.
But large
into,
homes
what
we
you're
review
calling
anyway.
small.
On
Right.
other roads, we
Right.
review
That's
large.
right. That's
Large
right.
road and
Exactly.
scenic road, so there's no distinction, is what I'm saying. That's what you're proposing. I'm not arguing with it, I'm just trying to
Yes,
understand.
that's just our proposal.
Yeah.
You're proposing is
It's
there's no
basically-
distinction between reviewing new homes on scenic roads versus all other roads.
Well, that's what
Bingo.
Article 20.
That's what you're saying, so
was.
pull the
That
whole
was Article
bylaw
20.
complete,
That's
not
what
change it.
Article 20
There's
that's
also-
exactly
That was
Article
Article
20.
Yeah, right,
I got
right.
it.
There's also a middle ground, which is you could find a way to incent smaller homes, because, I mean, the reality is if it's 5,950 square feet, you guys are gonna go to 5,949,
Exactly.
right? So you could also choose to have like a lower RGFA for review, like 5,250 on scenic roads. There's other
Josh, but
things.
explain to me, why would you care? I just want to understand. Why, no, just let me finish the question. Why would you care whether it's 59.99 or whether it's 55.99 or whether it's 54.99 or whether it's 10,000?
If we've acknowledged that the intent of the voters in 1997 was to reduce the size of homes being built on Scenic
Correct.
Road.
Correct.
And then we're sitting here 20 years later and advocating that we ignore their intent because the bylaw didn't work. Let me finish. That doesn't make sense to me, right? There are other things, other controls that we can put in place that has a less harmful effect on people like me, right? Actual landowners that wanna use their property. And also works towards, achieving the goal set forth by those voters in '97.
I wanna ask you something.
There's a middle ground. that
When
you
you're
can-
saying you wanted a 4,500 square foot home, did you mean with a garage within the 4,500 square feet?
I'm not
or
gonna, I'm not.
No, I wanna ask you this.
I'm not gonna get led down the game of like being asked questions to prove a point.
I'm saying that your small home includes the garage.
I understand that, but look, 5,200 square feet, including a garage, is a pretty big dang home,
That's
right?
fine.
Yeah.
Like,
That's fine.
so, but my
No,
my
his point is, you could define it whatever way you want.
My point isn't picking a side. It's
Yeah.
saying that if it is between not doing anything about this bylaw and finding a middle ground,
Or,
Right.
I sometimes hesitate saying middle ground, because you can find a better ground.
a better ground,
Might be
sure.
something completely.
Like, maybe there is a way that we make it, for certain lots, more convenient for you guys and for me, right? Like, there's
Yeah.
alternatives, right?
Just-
Make
Just- I just want
Just
to
for the
make-
record,
yeah,
I couldn't care less
I-
about the scenic road. I don't build on scenic roads, I don't care. But
But you would.
It's not, no, I never did.
You
I've
did.
never
Stay
built on
away.
scenic road. I have never built on scenic
Yeah.
road. I rebuilt the house that I lived in. It was on a scenic road, but I never took it down. I rebuilt it. So I've never built it. Yeah, I've never built a house on a scenic road. So I honestly don't care. And not even
Well,
that.
why are you here?
I am here, no, I don't care about the size this way or that way. He says to
Well,
make it
why
more
are you home?
convenient for me.
Why are you here? Is all
I am
I'm
saying
curious.
it's not a convenience for me.
It-
No, that,
it's
I'm
a
responding, I'm responding to
generalized,
Josh.
I wasn't targeting you, it's a generalized statement that I think is logically accurate, that if you incentivize the construction of slightly smaller homes, that it is possible there are certain lots in Weston that would make sense for certain developers that like developing there to build homes there and keep them smaller than they otherwise would in other parts of Weston.
Okay.
I think that's a logically
Correct.
acceptable statement to make.
Correct, correct. Now, the question is, would the market, accept that? In the sense that, would the market accept, would the market support this? Never mind accept, would
So-
it support it?
It wouldn't, I mean, it couldn't hurt anything, because the worst case
I'm
scenario
not
is you
saying
keep
it's
building
right, no.
10,000 square foot homes.
I'm not saying,
But
I'm not
the-
arguing with you.
But what I can say is the
Asking a
market
question.
being like the anecdotal, I mean, there's only 3,000 and some homes in this, so if you, 3,500 homes in our town, so if you've got, 35 or 40 families in town that wanna do something with their home that can't, right? That's still a pretty significant percentage of people in our town that are affected by it.
That's great. Now, who is going to define what is the small home?
We can have a deliberative
Yeah, I don't wanna go down
process
to
and-
that
So,
road too far.
Can I just interject something? I think in general, this bylaw was designed to, the scenic roads have the historic value and they have the rural character, and it's for everyone's enjoyment in the town. And so, the issue is, you wanna have some control of that, because it's for everyone's
Yeah,
benefit.
additional control.
Yeah, additional control, because it's for everyone's benefit.
That's fair, I'm with you.
The issue is, it doesn't always work, there's the loopholes, there's a bunch of things. The issue is, what is the correct balance between a homeowner's property rights and everyone else's 2 cents about what that person can do?
Nice.
And where
Very
that
good
balance is,
constitution.
and
But
where that
I
balance
tell you,
is.
I live on a scenic road, I socialize with a lot of people on scenic road. I know you guys might feel different. I've never had anybody come up to me in my almost 20 years of living in my house saying, we hate living on a scenic road, what a pain in the neck.
Yeah, well,
Never,
let me
not
just-
once, never any
Yeah, well, let
discussion
me just
about it
finish.
whatsoever.
When they go to
And
sell
I,
their
on a
house,
scenic road, have never had
When-
that either, so that's
Yeah.
not a differentiation.
Yeah.
What's that?
And I, living on a non-scenic road, have never had that
But you
either.
guys
So there's a zero
are saying for the
differentiation.
sake of the
Tony,
people on the
they
scenic
don't-
road, you know, God
We
save
didn't
them.
get to end of Mario's.
They don't complain about living there.
No,
They
but I
complain
didn't,
about
even
building
when
there.
Article 20 was out there, I didn't have neighbors saying, oh, thank God,
Because they
finally.
never
How
tried
many,
to
how
build
many of your
something.
neighbors are in their thirties?
A lot. I mean, what do you mean?
My point is that the.
I have probably 200 people in my neighborhood that are in and around scenic roads that I know, and I socialize with very regularly. I walk a dog, I see
I
people all
have
the
a
time.
very
They know
different
my
experience.
position.
But they're not
Different
building.
experience.
Building or selling.
They're not building.
But what, no, you were saying that people on scenic roads know about it and their
I'm sorry.
property's devalued,
They
you know,
don't
and
know
they're
that their property
walking
is
around
valued until they
slumped,
go
you know.
to either sell or build or do something with it. They
Like
have
the
no,
guys
like
who
he
built
didn't know. He had no idea. He bought it, he loved it.
That's why he's
Everything
here
was great.
today. I'm not saying
But I'm
that, I
saying
know, I'm
your
appreciating what he has to
200
say.
people don't know
But it's
either.
not like we have 100 people, you know, random people from the scenic road here. We have one
So
person
they
who
were
has.
invited. That's not,
Well,
you
no.
can't say that.
It's
I
okay.
mean, we didn't know,
So-
I don't think
Oh,
people.
no, you're saying, I'm just saying he's not representative. I'm not
We've-
saying they're.
We've been
on
going
board.
at this for an hour, and I think we basically are at the point where we were at Article 20, which is, a lot of people have a lot of opinions about the scenic road, and
Yeah.
I'm really
I
curious
think
about
we
the
need to see
data.
some data,
Yeah.
let's see some of
I'm really
this.
curious to see about the
spreadsheets.
data, and I'd also love, you know, I asked some questions in an email, so one caveat with the data is when I was looking at the file in the L drive that I believe you used for the analysis, I was a little lost on, you know, like additions, for example, you didn't distinguish between, like, do we have this, like, distinguishing between additions on scenic roads and,
Why don't you just
Well,
show the
let's look at
data?
the
Why don't
data.
you just take over for a bit
Yeah.
here? Show the data.
Okay, so,
It's not.
And while he's bringing that up, I think that it's important to understand that we look at, you know, we form committees and subcommittees to look at very simple things like parking costs in
Yes, right.
our MBTA station, and this is a really big issue, and it's not a 1.5 or 1 hour and 45-minute issue, this is like.
I said this was.
Well, he
in this
said it was an
meeting.
I'm just saying,
I
it's
just
a
said I
big,
wouldn't.
big issue.
But it hasn't, just to let you know, to me, I know you guys are very opinionated and very helpful here, but it hasn't come across to me as a big issue yet, so. Just I haven't seen the data that shows that it's a big issue.
well,
We haven't looked at data.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not a builder, and I'm telling you, it's having a real impact on me individually, right?
Yes.
Right.
In a way that doesn't make sense with the intent of the bylaw, and I'm not the only person in Weston with that.
Yeah.
So just because it only affects 20 or 30 of us doesn't make it right, if it's not accomplishing its purpose, so I argue that it's not a big issue.
okay, that's the summary, we can get into little,
Yeah, it looks like it's an addresses.
Well, just a minute, let me just, so you're saying since 1997, 116 homes have been built on scenic roads, is what you're saying?
Yep,
And then
116.
57% of those are over RGF.
or we're over 5,800, and we chose 5,800 because, you know, you can kind of run up to a higher.
Can you
the normal.
clarify, can you please clarify if 67 out of 116 are over 5,800 or are over the RGFA threshold? In other
Yeah.
words, if they were
Over
on 30,000
5,800,
square.
right?
I don't have that, I would have to go
Well, you
deeper.
can't-
No, you can't, this is not data.
Yeah, you
You
have
can't-
to
this
have
is
a
wrong
different
data.
residential area, I mean, a lot of.
Okay, then that's wrong, I don't know what to say to
Well, a lot of
that.
the scenic
Let's
roads are
just-
not residential A.
Yeah,
So this is
exactly.
based
So
off
it-
of residential A scenic road data, which isn't the whole story.
So,
It is.
No, and not only that,
So
but
50.
RGFA, unfortunately, are we talking about RGFA from MLS or RGFA from?
RGFA,
No, RGFA is only
Weston.
RGFA.
Weston,
Weston.
RGFA, yes.
Weston's
Am I
RGFA.
defend your data? Go over the points.
okay, so, we find 57% of the scenic road homes we built are over 5,800 square feet in RGFA. And if you go to the non-scenic roads, if 41% of them are over 5,800 in RGFA. So you have about 18% more on the scenic roads are going over that RGFA.
You have to have it
You
in
have to have-
residential areas.
Yeah, you have to
You
have.
can't do it
residential.
without A, B, C, D.
Well, all they're asking for is the same thing, but instead of the
Go back
5,800
to-
number.
Go
just-
back. Leave it there.
10%.
I was gonna go over to some,
Yeah, just say the RGFA
Sure.
threshold allowed for that size lot.
Yes.
That would be the,
That's
that would be
what-
relevant, more relevant.
these
And
are
I don't know how
different
different it
numbers
would be,
than
it might not
I've
be different.
They were-
So I updated them after I just got
Okay, so
Josh's
this is
questions.
new,
and-
this is updated
Yeah.
data from what I've seen.
Yeah.
So this argues their point, by the way.
Yeah, this
I- I-
is, this is why I'm
Wait, wait, this,
No,
this
it's,
is different data than I've seen
It's
this is
before.
a big, this is a big difference.
it's going to be worse
So
when you.
why are you
Okay.
guys arguing with
Stop,
his
and
data?
just
Yeah.
let him speak, because what happened is I was looking at the data that he used to run his analysis, and when, during Article 20, they were doing the initial analysis, there's a lot of things miscategorized, like Miriam Street wasn't being marked as a scenic road, right? So this is actually saying that
This is
18%
making your
more
point.
homes,
Of
this is saying that
course,
homes
yeah.
are
So,
put
so
bigger.
why aren't you agreeing with this? Why are you arguing?
Because
But
it's
not-
even
it's
more
not-
than
it's not
this.
accurate.
It's
It's
not
even more
accurate, it's
severe.
even worse.
Okay, wait, so let me now take it in, because it's new to me. So 57% on scenic roads are, let's call them large homes,
Yeah.
small L, not capital. And then non-scenic, it's only 41%.
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so there are a larger percentage of larger homes
Correct.
on
On the scenic
roads.
roads, yeah.
Correct.
Okay, so this makes the point, this supports their point.
Yes.
But I'm gonna just throw out
Yeah.
another variable that's not included in this. The scenic roads have a higher percentage of old houses than the non-scenic roads. And so more often, people are gonna, yes, Olga, it's true.
Anymore.
Just let her finish.
That, so more often, the modern buyers are gonna come in and say, we want to demo this old house and put up a newer house. So it's gonna be, so then it will be more often that new construction results on the scenic roads because of the age of the
Well,
house.
no, no, no.
In the last
That's actually a
20
good
I
years,
question.
think this actually shows that there are less new
Exactly.
houses built on scenic
Exactly.
roads, because 116.
No, I'm saying,
Yeah.
yes, but there's,
116.
but a greater percentage of them
So-
are old houses that the today's modern buyer wants to demo.
No,
No, what I'm saying
No.
is, if
Okay,
40% of the houses in town are on scenic
Are you saying because
roads,
of like demo delay
but
and
only
things like that?
116 was
No,
built,
it's just saying general.
In
and
general.
60% of the houses are not on scenic roads, and 305 new houses were built.
So-
Definitely, you've pushed new construction
So
into
what
the
I'd like to
non-scenic
see
roads.
in mind, to support Alicia's point of view, is to see more data on the increment. Did the houses get bigger?
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
Is that hard to do? To say if it
It'll
was
take a
small-
while, yes.
Okay.
It'll,
That would be nice to
I
say-
did not understand your point, I'm sorry.
I'm saying that,
The homes were bigger on scenic roads,
Well,
so
I know-
replacement homes are gonna be bigger.
I'm saying that
That's
more
what you're saying.
often the homes that are on the scenic roads are pre-1945 older houses that today's
So
buyers,
historic,
yes.
Yeah.
okay.
Or even
Yeah.
1960. They're the older housing
Okay.
stock. The newer houses tend to be
Right.
on the non-scenic roads. So that today's buyer comes in and looks at these, buys them, they're less expensive because they might be on busier roads, and they buy them and bulldoze them. So they're saying, I'm saying that there's a control that you would have to add if you were really to
Increment,
make,
you'd like
yes.
the increment, is what you'd like.
To control, to say what this data really means is, like, what percentage in each place are older homes?
So here's the,
That they're more
here's,
likely
So
to.
let me
here's
propose
the-
an alternate, I got
Yeah.
Josh Schultz on this, see if I can tell you. I'd like Imai to research the increment in the size of the home.
okay.
but what I
It
was.
takes into your point into
And
account,
also
saying,
age of.
they were
the
large
housing
to
stock.
begin with, right?
Okay.
And are they made even larger, or they were small and they were made larger?
But
Can I
to
just tell
your
you from a
point,
common sense perspective, very
Yeah.
simply, that
Yeah,
if you can look at a lot and stay under the RGFA calculation and not have to deal with all you people,
Right.
yeah.
you
right.
will. But
Right.
if you're gonna have to go to
Yeah.
the
No, we
scenic
know
island
that.
and deal with all you people anyways, you may as well go over and build a bigger house.
yeah,
That's
exactly,
simple.
but
It's
that
but
simple.
the other
So you can
thing-
do all the
to
analysis you
your
want, but
point-
it's that simple.
But let's, I want to,
Tony, hold on one second.
I want to be loyal to the overall point that said we put a scenic road bylaw together for purposes X, Y, and Z, and is it serving those purposes? That's why I'm having this conversation.
But
I-
to Alicia's,
I-
I'm sorry, I mispronounced your name,
Alicia, that's
but
okay,
it's
that's
my,
That's
sorry.
okay, go ahead.
To your point, in the last 20 years, just as an example, Kings Grant neighborhood that used to have all the old homes, they're gone. I was part of Kings Grant neighborhood. We replaced them with larger, bigger homes, but they were all under 6,000 square feet, right? So if today there is more older homes on scenic roads, it's because people didn't want to.
Oh, I'm not
That's
arguing
not
that
what
they're
she's
more, no,
arguing,
I'm
it's
arguing
not
that
society.
more of those older homes existed.
And they were bigger.
And more of them
Existed
exist
bigger?
now.
No, I didn't say bigger, I just said
Okay,
that
oh.
more of them existed
That's what I
on the
was trying to
scenic roads,
understand.
so that they were more likely to be the ones that people would buy to redevelop. So people would go buy the lot, the land, and,
But I'm saying that we tried to buy more of the non-scenic ones to
Right, right.
redevelop.
that were
So
older.
I don't understand the point, that's what I keep asking you,
Well,
because
I'm just saying that I think we need to have a control if we're gonna look at this, to say if the intent, what has been the intent, what has been the impact on the older houses?
She wants to take another look at the data,
Yeah,
a deeper look at
exactly.
the data.
That's all.
Can I tell you
We'll
what I
talk
see
about
when I
that.
look at this,
Oh,
that,
yeah.
that slide? What that tells me is,
Yes.
one, I'm gonna admit, I was around in 1997, and I really helped write this bylaw with
Yeah.
Roger Lee and the planning
Yes,
board.
yes, yes.
And one of the things that I specifically asked him, what are the purposes of this bylaw?
Yeah.
One of the
Who'd you
purposes, Roger Lee, and Elizabeth Monroe, and Katie Detweiler.
Who were, sorry.
they
They
were
were
all
all
board
members.
members.
The
They were
proponents,
board-
okay.
No, they were
No,
board
they were
members.
board members.
They were
They
board
were-
members.
Roger Lee was the chair.
Every one of them. And
Sorry.
And he smiled at me, and I said, is
Is he a good guy?
this to push construction into neighborhoods and away from scenic roads? And he smiled at me and he goes,
Bingo.
and looking at this data, that's what it did, because
It-
40%
So, well,
of.
that one was accomplished, and so we have a third one into the mix.
Okay,
So,
yes.
How was this accomplished? Tell me
40% of the housing stock is on a scenic road.
How much? Yeah.
40%, but only 25% of new houses built were built on scenic roads. That means that it accomplished that. It's pushing new construction into neighborhoods and away from scenic
Is
roads.
that true? Do we know that 40% of the houses are on scenic?
I don't know if
Yes.
it's 40%, but
Yes.
it's,
It's close to 40%, and that showed 116 new houses on new scenic roads versus 305,
305.
which is about 25% of new
Right.
houses were built on scenic roads versus 75% on non-scenic roads.
Which actually would support the point that it lowers the value.
Well, maybe it lowers the value, but it was one of the objectives of the bylaw.
But yeah, if
I don't
that's
think
the
they
objective
sold-
of the bylaw,
But
is
that was
to
one of the
They
stated
didn't
objectives.
sell it to
discourage
the
development
town.
on there.
They didn't sell
sell
it.
You're saying
to
the voter had in his mind.
No,
the voters did
Stopping
not know
maintenance.
this.
Yeah, right, yeah.
I knew it,
There's
the
room
plan.
for interpretation of what the voters knew. I was a voter then and I was involved as well, and I think that there's room for
Well,
interpretation of what the voters
it was
knew.
not a selling point
What
of
do you
the
think the
planning
voters
board.
thought?
I thought that they wanted to preserve the Weston's historic
Historic
semi-rural
character,
character
right.
and thought these
Yeah,
roads
that's
were the
what
most
everybody-
But it wasn't
important
sold.
and that they
I'm
wanted to
just saying it
say.
wasn't sold, but it was an
But
intent.
That was
That's fine, but I'm
100%
saying
illegal.
that was my
That's what we were
interpretation
told.
as an involved voter
That's what
at the
everybody
time.
was told.
I understand.
That's
Was
what
that
we're-
100% what the intention was? It had
Well,
nothing
I
to-
don't know, I can't speak to the,
No, but your impression,
Yeah.
your impression
No,
is
that's
100%
what-
that and had nothing to do with the mega mansions.
no,
Mega Mansion was part of
That
it.
was part of it, because mega mansions were not part of Weston's
She's
historic
dividing up
semi-rural
the-
saw you,
character.
I saw you being
I think
quiet
it's very
and
interesting
listening
development,
when
but-
Tony said 80-20, and we seemed to
Right,
agree
yeah.
with that. That it was 80 on the mega.
Well, no, I don't believe that.
No, you don't.
No, I don't believe it was 80 on the mega. I think
Do
it
we-
was a
do we
more
have
of a
other
mix,
data
but
to
that's
look at?
all just
well, here,
here, that's not something
No,
that can be.
Greg, you came in with data. You had data at Article 20 time.
No, yeah,
Do you want to share that?
yeah, but I'm not, if you wanna go and fight.
Well, let's
but
hear the
it-
rest of, what else do you have?
Imai's point in terms of just, when you look at the data on there, I've done it, and it was done directly
No,
on.
I have to say, EMI's data is supportive of your point of view, so there you go.
well, I mean, this isn't all broken down. You know, you wanna see, like, those few, there were ones that you pointed out, Josh, that, yeah, were on Ash Street. One was part of a flexible subdivision, one on Boston Post Road actually has a Boston Post Road address, but it's landlocked, so it doesn't count.
Right.
You know, so there were some of those. The ones on Ash Street, that was because GPS didn't have
Which
it all
one
the
on
way.
Boston Post Road is landlocked, it doesn't count?
895 or 8 something.
Dana,
There's one on
you're
Glen
saying
Road.
it's worse than what he presented because of why?
Because we haven't gone into the different districts, because if you have 5,700
Right.
square feet as your RGFA, but in residential B, 4,000 is a trigger.
Right, so
Then
you
you
have to
can't
look at the
tell.
actual trigger.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, so you want to dip down and become
Yeah,
more
it's going to
precise?
be
about
the
it?
Yeah, she wants to break
But
it
that's
down.
on both sides too, that's
Yeah.
on both
Yeah.
sides.
Right, but it might
Yeah.
work the other way, you
Right.
better be careful.
Yeah.
Well, I'm afraid-
No, but you might find out that this is affecting some of the zoned areas,
Yeah.
like
Differently
diff-
than-
It
differently.
expects a zone B
Exactly.
differently than it affects a zone A.
It's just
Actually, most
looking more
important.
deeply, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so what I'll volunteer to do, I'd like to see a deeper dive in a few different ways. Alicia
Okay.
said something, you just said something, so I'll put an email together to try to capture how we're gonna try to drill down on some of this data.
Yeah, I
to
think
be
you'll
more
find that
real.
residential B areas have been their property values have been most affected by this because they're fourth out there.
So are we gonna look at residential property values too and try and correlate that to see if they, you know?
Well, that's what I was gonna do.
You can check.
I think that's extremely difficult, because then you're getting into qualitative issues about this house, whether it's, you know,
Well, we could try and like just look at it in the same neighborhood. you know?
okay,
You could look at, you'd only be able to do it in new construction.
yeah, that's exactly, you
Yeah.
only look at new
So you can't
construction,
have-
you couldn't,
that's-
right. It would be
Sorry.
impossible to analyze his ranch versus the Gothic cottage across the street from it that was, you know, you can't, and they might be on the same,
Farms across the street from
pardon me?
it. Sorry, I said I had Wellington Farms across the street from it.
Well, I meant some of those
I know, I'm just being.
Glen House Hotel
Those are-
Yeah.
places that are left, but I'm just
Yeah.
So
saying,
yeah, those are.
yeah.
I
Yeah.
have a question for you guys. Do you know how assessment values work? You probably would know.
Yeah, we're divided into 15 sections in the town.
No, but would the assessments for scenic be comparable to the assessments for non-scenic? I'm just curious.
I don't, well,
They don't
I don't think that's a factor in there.
Oh, I
It
see.
isn't.
Well, that would
I
be-
mean, it would only come up
Hey,
in
you know, that would be a great
comparables,
question
right?
to ask
I'm
them.
just
Why don't you do-
curious, yeah.
Why don't you write down that, Elaine?
Can
Who
you
would we
find
do
out? Because it's
assessment?
an
Eric,
interesting.
I've talked to Eric, it does.
Yeah.
It doesn't,
It doesn't.
yeah, I don't think it does.
Oh, that's interesting.
He does
So
not
I-
have a factor about it.
Just one thing to point out, and it's fine that our discussion was all about, you know, intent of the bylaw and, you know, what, has it accomplished the intent, and I think, you know, those are good discussions. Rick came here for what can we do on process, and we haven't gotten to that.
So we have a half an hour left.
So-
So I'm volunteering, we'll do another round of data and we'll get back together if you guys want to talk about the data. Alicia and I think Emma will certainly look at the data. If we want to have the same sort of conversation about the data again and cogitate on, you know, what implications there might be for the bylaw, that would be interesting to us.
Well, the data is just we're trying to get a historical.
Right.
Exactly,
overview.
have we been true to the purpose of the bylaw?
And the purpose as relative to how it was sold to the town, not to how the people who wrote it expected it to turn out.
Yeah, I don't like this purpose, I like the larger purpose, right? We're in agreement with that, whether it's 80-20 or 50-50, you know, it's to prevent McMansions on scenic roads is what people voted for, and I think to preserve the scenic views of the scenic roads.
But
Is that fair?
we can also look at the data as a new independent body over 2 decades later,
Yes,
you know,
Assess.
make a different assessment regardless of original intent as well, right? Like,
You
I
can
think-
do that, yeah.
I think,
but do you think voters have a different view right now? I think they have
Yeah.
a similar view.
I think
maybe,
I
maybe,
think
but
that-
like,
They would
Yes,
all
change.
want McMansions, not all, in general, they want McMansions on
Yeah.
scenic roads to be discouraged.
right,
And
But they're
the
enhanced.
But they're
scenery,
enhanced, yeah.
well,
and the scenery to be preserved.
right.
What do you mean?
So, that hasn't changed. Did you imply there were changes?
I believe, as we've been saying, that the scenic road houses have become larger over the years.
No, I'm
Yes.
saying the intent though in the voters is the same.
Yeah.
We can assume that, for the time being. Okay, got it.
Well, I think we have very clear data from the last two elections that, I mean, the last two
Yeah,
town
exactly.
meeting things that were
Exactly.
overwhelmingly supportive of the scenic road bylaw.
Yeah.
I disagree
But the planning
because
board also
I just-
stood up in front of the town
Yeah,
and presented very, very inappropriately inaccurate data.
correct.
It was
I
not,
know,
it was
but-
not,
but
no,
she-
no, hold on.
This is meant to talk about the intent.
I'm just
but-
saying
not-
the intent.
But
Let's
it
not
would
go
have
there.
passed.
No,
It would
Josh,
have
let's
passed.
not.
That's
You wouldn't have
because-
gotten 2/3 to pass the law on
But
that
that's
day.
because
Go
they
back.
You
don't
wouldn't-
understand
you wouldn't have
what
changed-
it does.
If we didn't
That's
have a
the
scenic
problem.
road bylaw.
Well, that's
and
true
we
of
had
any
the vote
electorate,
on
that they don't understand the
Article 20,
implications.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have
Yet-
got the scenic
we
road
can't
bylaw,
revote.
because
But
you
I'm
need
just
2/3
saying-
and you didn't have it.
It's,
That's fair too, that's fair.
But-
You know what I'm saying?
That's fair.
I don't know if
I agree.
that's fair,
I
right?
don't
The
think
first
that's
time it passed,
No.
it was just like candy to a baby. I mean, it was,
That's fair, but I think no one's in disagreement that in general the voter, 50 or 66% of the voters, 51 or 66% of the voters want McMansions to be discouraged and the scenery on scenic roads to be preserved. we're all on board that. Does anybody?
Well, that's what they thought was happening.
No, but that.
But that was the intent.
So that means that was the
never
intent.
means the intent. We agree
Exactly,
with
that is the intent,
Right,
right.
so we're just
No one
trying to
did-
show that that's not actually.
We're trying to show, did that happen?
Right,
If
we're trying
it's
to
not
determine
happening, if it
if that
went the other
happened.
direction anyway,
Yeah.
It's definitely
let's take
not
another
what's
look at it.
happening.
Right,
That-
but they need,
Right, yeah.
but not everyone gets that yet, so people need to do.
Is it also fair to
data
say,
Right,
since
and
40,
town
is it
and-
also fair to
Sure.
say, since 40% of the town lives on scenic roads and 60% doesn't,
Right.
that 60% is always gonna vote to preserve something that they have
You got it.
no.
Well, then we'd have to go through
I
all the
don't
way.
know.
I don't, by the way,
Yeah.
my observation in my
Right.
neighborhood, people on
Exactly.
Scenic Road
Okay.
voted for the Scenic Road.
Same in my
And
neighborhood.
yeah,
So
too.
I'm
and other
telling
people
you
still
that
to
he is
testify for the
accepting.
scenic
Exactly.
roads.
I agree, there are a lot of people on scenic roads, but that were opposed to Article 20.
Right, yeah,
But a lot of the folks that I spoke to about it
didn't understand.
didn't really fully understand it.
Yeah, right,
But that's always gonna be true of any
Yeah.
elected.
And overwhelming is an
But-
improper statement, because.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I would say 89%
No,
opposed to
it got
Article,
demolished.
It
for
wasn't
the
too-
spike
it
strips,
wasn't
was
too-
89% voted.
Oh, well, yeah,
Article
that's
20.
because
Article
some jury was
Article
trying to
20,
bypass the
65,
rules.
so it was two-thirds against Article 20, one-third
wasn't
for.
two-thirds.
Yes, it was,
No, just, it was just
40
below that.
41 votes no, 241 yes, so it
That's
lost
50
that 65%.
59%, you would not have gotten the majority, you wouldn't have had the, you
Well,
wouldn't have
I'm
had.
just saying what the
But
votes,
listen,
how
it's
the
okay.
votes came
No, I'm
in.
just- I'm
That's
just
what they
saying,
were,
to
those are the
say-
numbers.
To say overwhelming with 1,000 people is an overstatement.
Well, that's, you work when the election.
65%.
But
Yeah.
if the data was displayed in such a way that everyone's seeing it, the beginnings of it here, the electorate and the people in the room might feel differently. Because if they actually see that it's making houses bigger.
Well, that's fine, that's why we need to look at the
Exactly,
data.
exactly.
Yeah, so we're still studying data,
Yeah.
but compelled to study data more. So
Yes.
if we could have left this meeting today and say, case closed, it's doing its job, we're saying case is not closed, we're looking at more data. Is that fair? You guys okay with that?
Are you good?
I'm trying to understand the.
No, we're not
purpose.
done, now we're going to your point, if you want. Of regardless of all, and whether it's doing its job or not, what can we do to make things better for you guys with the site plan reviews on
So,
Scenic Road?
so first and foremost, I would say that the process is opaque and arbitrary, and it is essentially used by the
Are
board.
those good things or bad? I'm just
Bad. And it's essentially used by the board as essentially a wedge to just control whatever they see fit to weigh in on a particular site plan, not strictly limiting to the,
Why don't you get specific?
I'll get very,
let me-
I'll
Yeah,
get
just
ve-
get
I'll get
specific
very
if you can,
specific, because I have
yeah,
a
that's
great case study, because I just went
Yeah,
through it.
great, just
Our lot on Miriam that we came before the board
very
for site
familiar with
plan
it, yes.
very recently, entire thing designed, drainage design, septic design, everything designed, septic system designed by a licensed engineer, reviewed by the town's consulting engineer, approved by the town's board of health, in the backyard, behind a limited disturbed area that is completely treed, behind the house, cannot be seen from the road, at any angle, in any way. And a planning board member, questioned a tree that had to be removed to build the septic system, and we explained why the tree had to be removed. And the planning board member, well, can you move the septic system this way? We explained, no, why we couldn't do it. The consulting engineer supported the idea that we couldn't do it. Yet we were asked to go back, redesign the septic system, see if there was a way that we could save this particular tree that nobody could see. And we said, okay, and we went back and did it, and they said, well, you turned it this way, could you have turned it this way? We said, no, and they said, well, could you go look at that? So in the meantime, we spent, I don't know, 3-4 months, and I don't know how many thousands of dollars with our engineer to come back to these meetings over and over and over to talk about a tree, and I'm all for saving every tree that we could save, that never should have been part of the review in the first place. So what I think is that there should be a specific set of criteria of what these reviews are gonna consist of, so that it's completely transparent for the applicant as well as the board, so that everybody can stay in their lane and know what is, subject to review and what basically is not. And that's what these reviews should be limited to, not to this just, we don't like the color of this, we don't like the placement of that. I mean, it literally is just used as a wedge into governing the.
Well, EMI has a whole website of the criteria that.
But you can put whatever you want on the website, it's a
Yeah.
matter of how it's applied.
So if
And
you
I'm
feel
just-
like whatever's on the website is not implemented into the meetings, you're saying we're not following our own guidelines?
Have you ever said in the meeting, I thought this is not on your checklist?
Yeah, I said it in that meeting.
Okay,
But from my perspective, I
Right.
mean, what am I gonna say, no?
well, I'm just curious about,
So,
The
no,
method,
yes,
yeah.
I don't, I
Right.
think that the board delves into whatever they see fit to delve into.
Anthony, if I could something.
So let me, I promise I'm not being defensive, I'm trying to establish a context here. So you put up 3 homes, right?
Yeah.
Right at that corner, which are nice homes and live around the corner from them. But in reviewing all those 3 homes, were there other things, or was that it?
No, that's just a case study. I mean,
Okay, but
I could go,
in 3 homes, did you have other feedback, other negative feedback like that?
yeah.
or not so much negative, but things that were out of,
Things that I would
Left
just argue
field,
have
right?
absolutely nothing to do with this.
Things
maintaining-
you thought should not be included
Right,
in
that's
a
what I
review
mean,
like
right.
this.
Well, I mean, if you can't see the side of the rear of the property, you know, you'll add tens of thousands of dollars in landscaping and lighting to screen the sides and rears of the property that nobody can see, except for possibly, you know, another residential neighbor. So if your intent is
So
to
you-
be,
Well, but
you
also
think
people
we-
who use the town land behind you, which I
Yes.
think is probably what they're,
right.
you know, people use those, there's trails behind you.
well, I'm not talking about just this project. I mean, I'm talking about, and that's fine, if there's town trails and that's public and so we want to screen that edge, I have no problem screening that
Yeah,
edge.
right.
My suggestion is that your reviews extend way beyond the scenic characteristics of what can be enjoyed driving down the road.
That
Or
was
on the
RGFA.
trails, in this case.
So those are RGFA.
Or
Are your
trails.
houses over the RGFA?
But it's not a trail
No.
bylaw, it's a
They're
scenic
not.
road
That's scenic
bylaw.
bylaw.
That's a
I
fair
actually
point,
don't
it's a
remember.
fair point, it's a fair point.
Yeah.
Touche.
It wasn't a
Maybe
flexible
they are.
subdivision?
Yeah, so
It was
it's
a
not,
It was a
Flexible
flexible
It's a
subdivision,
flex.
so that
so it was
comes with it.
RGFA plus scenic.
Yeah.
Well, it was a flexible subdivision that was approved previously, and then we came back in for site plan. And I would point out that when we came back in, we designed houses that were smaller,
Right.
with less impervious material,
I wasn't
and
on
maintained
board
more
with that, but I'm
trees
just, I know.
than what you had
how-
already
right,
approved.
Right,
I assume that the critical, in a good way, critical feedback that we're gonna hear now has to do not just with scenic road site plan review, but all reviews, right?
No,
We just
I mean, I'd love to talk about site plan reviews, but I thought we were here to talk about
Scenic road,
scenic
yeah.
road.
But there's nothing
So-
specific about scenic
Sure
road
there
site
is,
plan
sure there
reviews
is.
that is
On
more negative than other site plan
on
reviews.
small home review, every single aspect
Well,
of it
if
is-
the
is
point of the
well,
scenic
you
road is to
understand.
maintain.
The board behavior is what I'm saying.
If the point of the scenic road is to maintain the rural
Yes,
characteristic
right,
of the streetscape,
yes.
then that should be what the review is
But
about.
your house was an RGFA house as well as a scenic road, so you can't, you're not.
Right, if it's large home review, then I
I
think.
understand the
And
distinction.
you open the
There is
door.
fair game.
You've
That's
opened
why they
the
were
doors
like-
But
wide,
it's,
right?
but it's all tied together, the behavior of the board isn't gonna change in
Yeah,
that
exactly,
respect,
that's
regardless
my
of
point.
whether it's a 5,000 square foot home or a 3,500
Supposed to,
square foot
because
home.
they're
It
actually
should-
looking.
it should
But that's my point,
Different
if you want to
criteria.
discuss how to
Maybe
make
it's
this
supposed
better
to.
and make this a more palatable process for someone to go through it,
Yeah.
you should set a clearly defined set of criteria, and then you should stick to it.
Yeah, I think, I mean, if you look at his pages on the website, there's pretty specific criteria.
But you don't stick to it.
And then
But is there
I
a difference
guess
in
I-
criteria between scenic road
Yes.
bylaw and
No,
large
there
home
isn't, they
review?
run off the same site plan approval criteria.
Okay.
And so would
But
they
should
for
there be?
flexible subdivision? Yeah, I think that's a better question, is should there be a distinction? Or I think maybe where you're going, Rick, is should it be tighter? I think what you're saying is should it be, should the criteria
Be
or the
lighter.
area of applicability be, you know, cranked down so that it only is talking about what's visible? Because then what's
If
visible,
that's the intent, then yes.
so yeah,
I mean,
that's,
that's how you make it more palatable, is you make it much more clearly defined, and then everybody stays within those parameters, and we don't wander into
Well,
just,
those are two
negotiating
completely
the entire
different
site.
issues, because you're saying that if regardless of what the rules are, but if you think that people are going beyond,
that's exactly what I'm saying.
so then maybe we should attempt to rein in people wandering beyond the rules first, and then see if people can live
So, yeah.
with that.
well,
in one of the,
I mean, I don't think that tree was technically beyond the
Well, not-
rules.
Okay,
Maybe it was,
So maybe it's a bad example.
okay.
Although I-
But just
but
in
that's the-
general, saying
yeah.
that if we can stick within the
but I do
prescribed
think we
parameter
can.
of
So
the
Okay,
regardless-
so
review
Diana
process.
is.
And who's gonna govern that?
I I have.
She witnesses most of these things, so.
Diana knows in
Self-governance.
my heart.
No, I,
Yeah, go ahead.
I have two good examples. First of all, there's been an increasing oversight and interest in interior lighting, which I think is very concerning. That's not in the purview, it's not mentioned there. And, you know, what
I don't
happens
think we've
is-
ever conditioned anything on
Yeah.
interior
we've
lighting.
talked about it.
144 Oak Street,
Yeah,
we've
the Oak
gotten
Street.
pretty close on saying that it can, the
No,
light can shine up through the
we
top.
considered it because
You
it's
did on one of our
virtually-
projects on a cupola.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly, the
You're
cupola
getting-
and that sun porch on Oak Street.
Yep, yeah.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to put a light in a cupola.
That's very concerning.
Yeah, but,
That's
okay,
the
so
interior
these things
lighting.
I appreciate and we should listen, and I'm
Can I
fine
ask a
listening.
technical
But
question?
these kind of things we're talking about, like, your first thing actually resulted in a lot more money, I heard that.
A lot more time and a lot more money.
Right, yeah, is
It's
this,
true.
And
Right.
the other, well, I mean, I know, it's a private, it's a property right aspect. If
I
you're now
understand.
talking about interior lighting where it's never mentioned here, and then you kind of come in, it's not lumens on the exterior, it's lumen.
yeah, right.
And you don't know which lumen you're counting because of the
Okay.
light, which shines
Right.
usually through a window.
Gotcha, so that's
And
one.
that's one, and then the other one is the basement situation, where I've seen a lot of discussion, more and more discussion about the basement ceiling height, and what's happening in the basement. And that is outside of the purview, that's not mentioned here at all, there shouldn't be any review.
Oh,
of
I
the
think
basement.
once, maybe this is what you're talking about, we talked about basement, because if they had a shorter basement, then the height of the house would be reduced. That was the only time that I can recall
I
getting
remember
into
that.
anything about the
Yeah.
basement.
Yeah, there's been more.
Was there been others?
There's been more discussion.
We try like heck to stay out of interiors.
Yeah, there's been more discussion of basements, than I've ever heard before.
Well, maybe as part of the RGFA discussion,
As
like a
part of the
finished
height.
yeah, right, but
The height,
also about the
I'm thinking
RGFA, like, if it's,
Well, that's a known already. I mean,
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
we don't mean to argue, we're just
right,
trying to
right,
understand.
no, I'm just,
So
The
I-
basement height has been, whether it affects the height of the house or not, if people wanna bring down their ceiling height on whatever floor, it's just
It's
you have your
inside.
35 and a half feet.
Well, yeah, but that was
There's a
the
limit.
But
point.
go ahead, I want to
So
hear
just
from you
that.
rather than to counter.
Okay.
Well, I just think that there shouldn't be a discussion of basement ceiling.
Okay,
And
that's,
Yeah, but
it's
there's-
hugely impactful for property values.
right, yeah.
There is a lot of arbitrary.
But I don't
stuff.
see, what I'm trying to get out of you guys, what you have is, what are we doing that's costing you so much?
So
The
you're,
horizontal
That's
planes, the
huge.
horizontal planes that you take not even 30 seconds to look at on the things.
The sections, you're talking about the site
The
sections.
sections.
you also
Site
The size section.
Literally,
require,
it'll cost $7,500 right there, and you guys look at it for 2 seconds, because it's on too small of a sheet, no matter how you look at it, to get any perspective, and you get a much better view if you go out and take a look at things.
Okay, that's.
It's
that's-
crazy to spend $7,000.
I
You
don't
also-
think
You really
it's very
spend-
valuable, to be
Yeah,
honest
it's
with
really
you. They can
nice.
actually,
Spend
they can actually,
$7,000.
yeah,
$7,500.
it helps it maybe.
For who, you give someone $7,000 for those?
Yeah. that's
Depending
what
on
I'm-
how
that's a line of work for me.
Depending on how you draw those to scale,
they're
Study
paid
because
that.
you can have a different horizontal scale and a different vertical scale.
All right, so I
You can
think we
actually
should think
use
about
that
that.
to your
So you
favor.
also-
in
Can,
that.
can I want, hold on,
It's
I'm
useless.
so confused by this. So we've got a zoning bylaw that's passed by the town from a
We're into
legislative
really good stuff
perspective.
here.
Well, I know, but this is
Okay.
important. Now we have this list, and it ties back to this. Like, if you're looking at like the federal or state government, they go through a rule-making process. So if like the legislative body gives them the authority to do a thing,
Right,
part of that thing requires them to go through a rulemaking process before they start enforcing things. So they say, this is what we wanna do, let me get feedback, let us make a decision, and, you know,
where are you getting at?
so what I'm getting at is, you know,
Was
so
this
this
adopted
bylaw
by rules?
passed,
Yeah,
this
yeah.
looked,
Yes.
this looked entirely, what's that?
It was, the rules were adopted by the planning board.
Right,
Yeah,
so
but they
this-
got, they go
What is
through
your
a
point?
process.
my point is that the planning board is clearly adopting policies right now without going out and soliciting feedback from people. The fact that two people on the planning board have no idea if this plan costs $7,500. So like,
The
it's
cost,
just.
that's not our
So can I just say
purview.
No, but
specifically?
hold on,
Nobody said-
let me finish my thought, please. I'm not
Cover here.
criticizing anyone. I mean, I think that the
Right.
fact you're having this meeting is phenomenal. What I'm saying is that the process that state and federal bodies go through is for this exact moment. It's not your purview, but as a board, you can say, well, we don't really use this thing, and it's gonna cost, it's gonna cost a homeowner in town $10,000 to
This
do
is,
it.
we're
Well,
doing
that's why we're
exactly what
asking.
you
We didn't
want.
know
That's
this.
what we're doing right now.
Well, no, but
So
what
if it
well,
didn't happen 10 years ago, I can't.
So
No,
I can give you more.
My point is that you're asking what you can do to get things better, and one of the things is to your point, not only have a list of objective criteria for the home.
No, we do, we have more than you think.
And, no, I mean, I've read it, I believe you, but my point isn't about that, it's having a defined process for putting new things on that requires feedback from.
Oh, I see, I see.
Right.
So we were to demand well, at some point when we demanded wells, was there a formal process to demand
There
wells?
wasn't.
I wasn't there,
Oh,
I don't know.
there
But in my
wasn't.
time, we haven't,
Is
any new
rules-
rules?
Is this part of the rules and regulations, this checklist?
Yeah, this was part of, this was,
See how-
this
But
was,
How
did that
it
ever
grew?
have a public hearing?
No,
I thought rules and
no.
regulation changes needed a public hearing.
rules and regulation changes do need a public hearing. This
But
had,
this is new.
This was
no, this is
never-
not new.
This is not a new checklist?
Can I just
No.
point out on this?
Yes.
It's from 1998.
You
This is the
called,
one that
We
I,
never had this in 1998.
No,
and
this-
we
well, I don't know
never
what
had-
you had in 1998. This was here as part of the rules when I got
It was
here.
written, and I remember how they were getting, they were being written in every half a year, slowly, one piece at a time, and nobody ever
Okay,
checked.
so we're
it.
operating at three different levels. We're saying,
I
does the
can get-
bylaw need change? And we're saying,
Yeah.
what about planning board rules and regulations? And then I also want to get some thoughts from you guys on what can we do in the short term to make it better for you?
I
Can I
just
say
give you a
most
really quick
expensive?
response.
Yeah, right, so can we
You want the
continue
three most
on?
expensive
No,
things?
he was,
Yeah,
Let
let
me
me
say it
stand
first.
up
Go ahead,
first.
go ahead.
So architectural plans and landscape plan listed on here. What this does not say is that you need to have a licensed architect stamp your plans and a licensed landscape architect stamp your plans, which the building department does not require and which adds tremendous time and money.
How much does that cost?
Huge.
It's
huge.
huge, it's huge.
That's like,
I mean,
you know,
a
It's
landscape,
months
a
and months of
landscape
work.
plan versus having your civil engineer have a nursery with a, you know, somebody who does a design on it that
and
will
that's.
cost you somewhere between 0 and 2,500, can cost you between 10 and 20,000.
And when I
Probably
said-
more, there's probably landscape
It's
architects
actually more than that.
that are,
I
that are
think-
north of 50,000.
That's
That's not a
talking-
building department requirement, that is strictly a requirement, it's not,
Okay.
that doesn't even say stamped by a landscape architect, but it's a requirement when you submit.
And the
Building department
difference-
does not require stamped architectural plans to pull a building permit, but this board requires it.
We
Does the
actually, I
design board
once
require
sat
these
down,
things in every year?
No.
I don't know, but we're
No,
not doing
it's
It's
it.
under.
I once sat down with a builder and we actually compared costs
Yeah.
on the planning
Yeah.
board process versus a non-planning board process.
Yeah, I've seen some of those charts, they're not credible to me, but I'd be interested in
Well,
looking at them.
listen, this is my, this is just what I do for
Yeah.
work, right?
Right.
So the difference was approximately $250,000. That's the difference on the
That's
house.
preposterous.
On the
That's-
house. No,
I'm
this
just telling
is
you,
between
we're
carrying
design-
I mean,
costs.
I'm,
We're a design build
Carrying
firm,
costs.
we can do plans in-house, we can do landscape plans in-house. It will cost us $2,000 to $3,000 for us to do it in-house on our own CAD
yes, yes, that's
system.
fair,
For
yeah.
us to hire an
Yes,
architect
good.
and
like it,
hire a
yeah.
landscape architect, it will be 10x.
And the landscape architect.
So you're
is not
saying it's
required.
4,000 compared to 40,000?
No, you're talking
Yes.
about just those
Yes.
plans.
Plus
I'm
the
talking about the whole
7,500.
process.
No, I'm just talking about the plans.
Oh, I'm not talking about the plans, I'm
I'm just
talking
talking
about the whole
about the- I'm
process.
just talking about the
The
plans
plans, I
themselves.
agree with you, the plans, I agree with you. But the whole process, we calculated the process of building this house versus that house on scenic or non-scenic, and that was the difference.
Sure,
So I was trying to break it
the
down.
requirements,
I was trying to break it
the landscape buffering requirements that you guys require on a scenic road, sure, can easily add north of $50,000
Okay, yeah.
to a
and-
project, easily.
Right. But that's what the public wants, so I don't feel bad
Yes.
about that. The public wants to preserve the scene.
Well, yeah, but
So-
I
so-
mean, but the public can't see the backyard.
Okay,
Exactly.
I agree,
Exactly.
but
And with
Some of the-
my
But
case over
abutters
next to-
often can, and abutters
Right,
are
yeah.
very, very vocal in this town, and that's how I first met the
But that's not,
planning
what-
board,
Butters
that's
are
not,
not-
but that's
butters are
not
not
what the
scenic
scenic
road.
road's for.
But it's still, but we're preserving property rights for abutters
But
as
the-
well
but
by
the-
providing screening.
So you're making my
No,
point.
it's a scenic road law.
That's
You're
why-
making my point.
that's
Do we
why
have a scenic
Josh
road
will
bylaw?
look
But
for
it's a
one of
good
our
point,
neighborhoods.
The characteristic of the road.
That's
Or are
why
we
Josh
protecting
will
every
look to
single
one of our
homeowner in town
neighborhoods
and
and make
everybody
sure
else?
that he's a
Because that's
butter.
an unfair, that is an unfair policy. If our goal is to protect the butters, then that should be a policy that applies to
No,
every
I'm just
property in
saying
the
that-
town.
Well,
We
it's
have
a
a
really
very
good point.
vocal
Okay,
abutter,
good point.
we have very vocal people in this town who
but
show up
that's-
at every meeting.
No,
Yeah,
but
that
if
is
you had
true.
a strict- that's the
Very
point
true.
of the law.
But
It's
if
a
you had
fair
a
point.
criteria that you
Yeah.
put on the table and said, here's the criteria, I'm sorry, but your rear lot line isn't under our purview, end of conversation.
So that's something to discuss, but I will say that these are voters who also, who voted us into our positions and voted for the scenic road bylaw, and they're voters, people who are very vocal, who want their little oasis surrounded by shrubs, and they want that protected.
And
But
the
they're
way
not-
that-
That should be
I'm
something
just
that's
saying.
codified for the
But
town, not
That's
under the
fine.
guise of.
I'm just saying that they're.
But they're not any
That's
less
that is the
vocal,
mindset.
they're not any
That's
less
the-
vocal
you're
than
here.
the voters on Kings Grant.
So what
or
else is
anywhere
making
else.
it expensive?
So let
Keep
me tell
going.
you, another piece is on 5 Windsor Way, when that was approved, there were no neighbors who had any concerns at all, and the planning board said, well, it's not about you, it might be about you in the future. So it's not actually about if the neighbors want their oasis, it's about some random person in the future who may not even know there's a difference. So if you don't have abutters that have concerns, I don't think the planning board should maintain such a strong level of concern.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that one, that's an unusual one.
I haven't experienced that.
Yes, exactly.
It was shocking.
So what else is costing money? These are really good. I've written everything you've said.
Okay, so I would say some of the architectural detail required on the elevations of the house, on the scenic on the scenic. Now, I'll grant you that that's probably under the purview, because if you can see it from the road and you wanna maintain it.
But you have to do that anyway, right? It's not
No,
like
but you don't have to do, I mean, the type of window mullions you use, the type of exterior
we don't
siding
do
you
that.
We don't go down to window mullions, that one is,
I mean,
You
We
did
we do
when you were
material.
siding at 346 Highland Street, you guys went and wanted to see how the stones were actually set in the side, and it was set.
Well, Island Street was also historic too.
Yeah.
I mean, we've
And
had
then
to
we
bring,
was-
we've had to bring samples of siding, samples of exterior masonry,
And this is costing
When-
you lots of money?
Time,
Time.
oh,
Okay.
and money. Yes,
Okay.
and money.
time is
I
money.
mean, that guy who's built 346 Highland Street can't sell that house.
Well, he's-
But his
And
veneer looks
honestly,
great.
Yeah,
Greg,
but that's
you
not
said-
our fault.
You were about to name
That's not
three
our
things,
fault.
and
Tony,
you
the
got
three,
interrupted.
the three biggest things, and already one was mentioned. One
Yeah.
is the landscaping. Landscaping, by far, what you end up doing on the landscaping can add anywhere from $20,000 to $50,000 on homes of $2 million.
And that's, you're saying that's
number
not just
one.
design,
That's
it's
number one.
actually implementing the
It's
landscape.
implemented, it's literally putting trees into woods that I have to beg to take trees out of the woods, because they're gonna die when they put them in the woods as a buffer anyway, because there's so many
Right,
trees
right,
there,
right.
okay, it's crazy. And by the way, 3 of them did die, and I had to replace them on that, anyway, recently. Number one is the landscaping, by far, okay? Number
Okay.
two, it falls into the landscape design in terms of the stamp drawings, that's a big deal.
Stamp drawings, you
That
mean.
is a big deal, but in that stamp drawings, you then sometimes have in and outside of that, the cross sections. The cross sections alone are I'm telling you, a $4,000 to $7,000 item. And so
Right.
sometimes, the same architect will be doing it, so it gets a little mixed in. The last and most.
But you don't have to do these things as a part of your architectural work regardless, you don't?
No,
Nope,
You'll build
not
these
required by
houses.
the building department.
nope,
I see.
yep.
And they aren't, I mean, so I have been in the CAD business for a while, but if you design these things in Revit, it's kind of push button and you produce these drawings.
It's
But not everybody does this.
You're not being paid
And,
enough.
and the last
Well,
strong, the
CAD
last
is-
strong second is wells. The demanding
Wells.
to be putting wells in. That can range anywhere from, the last well I just paid for during the thing was $28,000, so that.
Yeah,
that was
wells are-
cheap. That
wells
was
are
cheap.
very-
49 Winchester didn't even want to build out their third floor because the well was going to be so expensive.
I don't think wells is a scenic road thing, I think that's, if you wanna put in irrigation system, now they put, if you put in a well.
It's a
If you
town
wanna-
resource.
if you
Yeah,
wanna
we're
go-
looking on
But I don't
going
think that's-
forward.
That is a stretch as far as you can go ever. I mean, it's something that just came out of nowhere.
Yeah, but I
Wells.
don't think the scenic road triggers that, I
No.
think the irrigation.
Well, it
No,
triggers
it
it
does.
as,
It
it
does.
triggers that,
They mandate
even
it
if
if
you
you
go
have
in
a
a small
If
home.
you have an irrigation system.
Large
No.
home.
No.
Do you not have an irrigation system when you plant all these expensive trees that have to
Well,
go
I
up?
mean, of course you have.
It-
Oh, if you don't have it.
If you,
Right,
if you're not
but
on
whether you're on a scenic road or not, once you go for an irrigation
a
system.
site plan review.
So they
No,
force
they
you to
don't.
put all these
That's not
trees,
true?
and then they force
So
you
it
to
is
put
a
the
scenic road
irrigation
requirement?
system
It is
as
a
well.
scenic road.
Alright, then I a million
Is that
percent
your
agree
first time
with
thinking
you.
that, or have you said that before?
That's 30 grand.
Is that your
without
first time
walking in the
thinking
door.
that, or have you
I
said that before?
thought
No,
But this-
once you put in an irrigation
I'm
system, you
horrified.
need to put in a well.
But this is why you can't build, this is why I can't go build a 4,000 square foot home, because I'm immediately tacking on $80,000 in
Exactly,
landscape, well,
exactly, exactly.
and the list goes on of stuff that was
And
that was
that's
Right,
not
supposed to
all.
sit
so
out.
now you
And
gotta,
that's
so
not
now
all.
you're already going, so you may as well do the RGFA, go over the.
Exactly. I mean,
Exactly.
I'm not opening a big house, so I'm gonna do an RGFA and sell it.
He
Can
has no
I-
choice.
Can I interject one thing? Wouldn't it,
So-
I'm a solution person, so like,
Yeah.
let's say his existing house has a 8,000 square foot lawn with an irrigation system. He goes to build a new house and he proposes a 4,000 square foot lawn, reduce the size of the lawn and he wants to put half the size of the
Water,
irrigation,
yeah.
he still has to put in a well, but he reduced the size. It's just that part of the solution has to be, you know, if you.
What's your water group called with Harvey?
It's basically the water working group.
The water working group
Yeah.
is working this issue
Oh,
directly.
good, good.
We're gonna be looking to
Because-
them for
Because it
how to
seems,
take
it
it
seems
forward
like
in
it can be
irrigation.
applied in a very unfair manner, where someone
I-
building
I-
a new house has to put in a well.
I think we have to change it.
I wanna
And
pitch
it's
my
not-
roof, I
it's
need to
not
put in a
sol-
well.
It's not solving, it's not solving the
Well,
water
only if you
issue
put in
in
a new
town.
house.
Clearly, yes,
By
I mean,
just-
we're the worst violator of overuse
By,
of
by
water.
just picking on a new house is saying, you have to put in a well,
agree,
but
we
this
agree.
guy can clear his lawn, and he cleared his lot, and put a lawn.
When's the next
and
meeting
not.
of the water group?
Well, it's only a working group, so I don't have it like as
Okay.
a.
This should be a working group.
This is, and there's more to the cost. of
Yeah, keep
this.
going. Keep going.
So-
I've written down everything you've had to say.
So this
What can we
is
say?
July, and I need a meeting, and we're talking about something that we need to do. And then in August, nobody's here to do the meeting, and in September, they continue me to October. And in October, for some reason, they asked a question about something, and I have to bring another answer, so they continue me to November. And then it's Christmas, da-da-da-da, and then it's frost, and I can't do anything until next spring, so
It's a
there you go.
scheduling issue.
So
It's-
there is
it's
my
6
9
months.
months, there's my 9 months
Interest
lost.
But
Interest
if
carrying
you were-
9 months
The group is
lost.
responsible
That's a
for
big-
some
that is a big-
regulation, however light it is.
So it's
There's gonna be
9
a
months of
scheduling issue.
interest carrying lost until I can break ground, and this was
Okay.
July.
Well, I'm going after costs that we can do something about. I mean, you have to schedule meetings.
You
Is there
have to,
a
but
way to-
the little
You
things
can be
that
expeditious,
you,
though, with
yeah,
the
exactly, the
process.
little
More
things that
expeditious.
you require, like, for example, in
Okay, good.
construction, in our part of the world, they give you 30 days, and they have 30 days to make a decision. And you cannot
building
go
department.
beyond, in the building department, yeah, they cannot go beyond 30 days. Here, it's perpetual, it's like forever until you decide not to.
It's,
So-
there's
So
pending
you
state,
want
there's
limits
pending
on
state
the
legislation on this,
Scheduling,
right?
right?
So
Like
Yeah.
40B.
It's like, no, there's pending legislation to like limit the amount of time planning boards have to issue.
Yeah, I hope so, because this is, it's insane. And this is one of the, and the little things
Keep in
that.
mind, we're a volunteer group doing the best we can, so it's something.
Exactly.
She wasn't saying you were.
We've been here
But
She was not, you've been.
listen,
all
I
over
actually, you know
That
what?
was not the case.
Before you make
Hey,
any
things that they
assumptions
got.
about what I'm saying, I
Yeah.
want to compliment you on
Yeah.
the fact that you came here, you're hearing us, you're listening to us. I think it's fantastic. It's the
Taking
first
notes.
time in 20 years.
Usually when this happens, you guys are about to leave. The
Yeah,
last time everyone
it's-
talked to us was Betsy Ware, and then she left a
Exactly,
week later.
yeah. So the fact that you are doing this, it's fabulous.
Maybe we'll be gone.
And I think it's a big compliment to both, to you guys.
Well, and thank you
No,
for
for-
coming, by the way.
No,
We're
but
very
it's a huge.
So
and,
the answer is time is money. And I would say that this process adds about 6 months minimum to any construction process. And if you look at, interest carry on land, taxes, insurance, on carrying costs, it's a substantial number.
And it's
So
not
do you
that
now
much on a
understand
smaller
why I
project,
said
but it's
$250,000?
still months, not weeks.
So,
That's
and
what-
I understand you're a volunteer board, and I will say that EMA, I think their process of having an intake meeting
Yeah.
and getting everybody around the table and getting some feedback up front and scheduling the site visits up front, I think those are great things, and I think
Yes.
they're really helpful. So,
Any other ideas on how to make it faster?
I mean,
some things should
now I'm
simply
sounding
not
smug,
be
I
looked
mean,
at.
I know
That's
you
all.
guys are a
Don't
volunteer
listen to
board.
rear abutting neighbors who aren't on scenic roads.
Well, I think you, I
I
think if
guess
you give
that's-
too much power to neighbors,
Exactly.
if you give them too much power, like if they know there's a set of, the more specific you make the criteria, the less you have to accommodate, certain.
Exactly.
Cause if a neighbor is not gonna scream about something if they know the law is that you can have it. Well, you can have, you're allowed to do this, so they can't, do you know what I'm saying? If it's when things are arbitrary that they can really gang up on a neighbor. And it's not the developers, I don't think you guys have as big of a problem with developers as you do with a homeowner, right? I think, aren't there situations where
Developers barely come to you guys.
Yeah.
That's
aren't there
because they don't go
situations
to
where
avoid them.
Exactly.
homeowners,
Terrible.
it kind of creates a hostile situation for a new person coming into a neighborhood and all their neighbors are ganging up
Look
on
at
them.
Saddle
I know it happened in a couple of neighborhoods where, you know, people at the end of their project, they said, gee, do we really even want to live next to these people that just slammed us?
But then they'll turn around and do it to the next people that buy next to them, so.
So to answer
Yeah.
your
Exactly.
question,
So you shouldn't give them weight, you shouldn't
But you
give them weight.
shouldn't.
Well, I didn't give
Well,
them,
we
give
have-
them the right amount.
Yeah, I would agree with that one. I do
if we
think
have
there's sometimes
limits.
there
Yeah,
are
that's-
abutter concerns
Yeah.
that should be outweighed by the fact that, hey, it's a buildable lot. You can't
Exactly, you
put-
can't expect this
you
meadow
can't
to be there
expect it,
forever
yeah, you
and
can't
ever,
expect
it's
it just not to
gonna
build or
happen.
have this great view.
Exactly.
To make
I can
it
understand
easier, I was building a house in Brookline, a couple of years ago. And I walked into the building department, and there was some issues that had to do with something that had to do with their version of the planning board. And I walked into the building department, and I was prepared for this. This was a custom home for somebody, it wasn't a spec, so I didn't really,
Excuse me, have you said everything you wanted to say?
I think so.
Anything
I mean, no, there's a lot more I have to say, but
You left everything
it's
on
out
the
of
field?
It's out of context for what we're talking about.
Okay,
So
got it,
I had,
okay.
it's more solution type based information.
Okay.
So are we,
so
are we
we'll-
scheduling?
Did we commit to meet again then?
I think
Everybody
we
here?
should.
Okay.
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 Great.
As long as you promise not to bring a camera.
We'll just have to find a time.
I already have said things that I don't want on videotape that were
No.
unintentionally disparaging to people.
He's very detailed about that.
I'm practiced at that, so. Someone was talking, sorry. Do you have-
I was telling about Brookline.
so we walked into the building department, and I was telling my partner, I said, oh, what are we? He says, oh, no, it's not Weston, it's easy here. I said, what's easy? He says, there are rules, you go by these rules, and you step out this way or that way, nobody can say, so it was so easy. The whole process was so easy. I
Well, why don't
walked
we
in,
look at the
I-
way, you think Brookline is
It's
a
not,
great?
it's not, don't look at, Brookline is a city, it's a different
Right.
thing. It's just, what I'm trying to
The
tell you.
rules of the rules.
But how do
The
you
rules
quantify?
were
Just have
very
to-
No, no,
easily
I'd like to
quantified.
go
You could
somewhere where
not-
Yeah.
There was nothing arbitrary
Yeah,
about
Do you have
it.
any
makes
No,
towns
we
that
don't
didn't
feel like
agree?
it's that arbitrary, but I'd like to see examples of other towns that
What
have
I'm
done
trying-
exactly what you want.
They are not going to fit our town. Brookline is not, Brookline right now does
Do you
not
have
allow
another town?
oil and gas in their
Yes, exactly.
infrastructure. I
Do you
mean,
have, does anybody have an example? You guys do work in other towns
Yes.
where it works better? And
Anything
they
where
have
it's
rules
not
that-
arbitrary
I
works
live
better.
Okay, that's not a good answer to the question.
Yeah, but I think the
I think you
warrants,
understand.
I
yeah,
don't
I do,
agree with
the
you that
warrants
it's arbitrary,
came
but,
down, then you have less
Challenge, I can't-
problem with
Well,
neighbors coming in
because-
saying, oh, I wanna do this, and, you know, if it, and then you say, no, I'm sorry, that's not in our purview, we cannot
Exactly.
do
That's,
that.
that's
And
very, very
That's
good.
exactly.
That's
That's
what
not
we,
mean by
that's exactly-
criteria.
right, exactly, that's what I'm saying, so I totally understand that.
Because I've seen
point of view.
situations
Yeah.
where somebody's allowed a light here and
Yeah,
somebody's not allowed a light
exactly,
here. And
right.
so- and you don't know who is going to be in which mood to allow what.
How
You
many
know-
times do you have neighbors come in to have positive rating reviews about the permitting process?
Nobody.
I've had some, yeah.
One
No.
out of 99?
No, it's more than that.
Neighbors?
11 Bradford Road, we had a kumbaya moment there, right?
Oh, I've had neighbors stop me at Brothers and say, thank you so much for what you
You
did
mean
for that
neighbors?
house."
No,
Neighbors.
I'm saying neighbors. How have you ever had neighbors in the planning board meetings that come in just to fully support the
Oh, actually,
development?
yeah,
yes.
support the
Yeah, we
Yeah.
do, yeah, we
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
For the
Yeah.
addition of the
Or
garage.
people will come in with a set of letters from everyone in their neighborhood and then say, look, everyone supports this.
And I have to say, and still in some kinds, in those situations, and I'll point them out so you
Yes.
guys can see that, you guys continue to go on about
Yeah.
things that should happen, even if the neighbors are all totally
Yeah.
supportive.
I need to leave as well, so the last thing I'll say to answer your question in time is, the obvious answers are meet more,
Oh, did
hire
Mario
more
forget his
staff.
briefcase?
Assuming neither of those things are happening, then I think you gotta be more efficient with the time that you have. And part of the way to do that is, if some of these hearings just go on and with people just essentially saying the same thing 10 different ways.
So I think,
We've cut
would you
down on
agree
that.
we're getting better?
Yeah.
or-
Yeah, because they're not as long as they were, because
Yeah.
I wrote the
No.
minutes for 3 years and they were 3.5
We
hours.
used
So
to
you
go
can
till
be more
midnight.
efficient, you can get more people on the
Yeah.
agenda and you
Right.
can move people through the process
Exactly,
faster.
and then it would
I
speed
mean, to
things
her
up,
point,
right.
we go to schedule an intake meeting, it's booked for 30 to 45 days out, we get to the meeting, we can't get on an agenda for, 60, 90 days.
Yep.
That's,
So-
that's different right now, right? I mean, it's been less.
I haven't,
Yeah, we only
Yeah,
have
the
one
economy,
review.
something's,
Yeah, well,
things are
it-
slowing down, which is.
It's not, it's a
good.
function of how many people are coming in,
Yes,
you know?
exactly.
I can only put
Yeah,
so
the
many,
problem-
I can only schedule so many
Fixed
site visits in a month, right? You know,
Right.
there's only so many times to do that.
Yeah.
We have a fixed supply and
Yeah.
variable demand.
Yeah.
so you gotta be more efficient.
So at times we gotta be really
Yeah.
efficient, at times we can take our
Try.
time depending.
Try.
But there's nothing about like syncing up with you, like in your project, are we,
Once we start building,
yeah, or whatever we're doing, are we meeting with you at the right time so as we can,
One of them,
I mean, I guess I would suggest that the intake meeting, having to have your plans, so
yeah, exactly that sort of
you
thing.
can't get anywhere till you have an intake meeting.
Mhm.
But you won't have an intake meeting until the plans are 100% done.
Oh.
It would seem to me that you could have the intake meeting with plans in a more conceptual stage, get some feedback,
Okay.
get us on an agenda, and give us an opportunity to then finish the plans.
That will save you money and time.
It'll allow us to move down some parallel
Exactly.
paths.
So
Right.
intake with draft, with concept plans,
Okay.
And then,
Yeah,
that's
and then
it.
the other thing I would say, like with the septic systems, I've been noticing there's been some discussion of septic systems by the board, and I think that the Board of Health probably does a good job with that, so if they're signed off on it, maybe there doesn't need to be a discussion of septic systems.
well, that's a big cost item,
that's a big
because,
cost item.
because they have to design and apply for a septic system on a project that you don't know if it's happening or it isn't happening. Or you get to the board and they say, well, we don't want that tree there, so move your septic
So
system,
move
and
it.
You gotta go
now
back
we just
and do it
threw that
again.
all out the window.
That's a good
So,
point, Diana.
Yeah, that one.
Okay, we're starting to
Out of our
disperse,
wheel.
you're leaving, so
I
do
got
we
it.
wanna
Okay, thank
conclude
So
the
the
meeting
other
now?
thing that just
Yeah.
to think about,
Right.
please,
Yes,
the perpetuity
Thank you.
of,
Site plan review.
Or
of
the scenic
this,
bylaw.
of the stuff that you put in the deed
Oh,
is a little bit too much, I think. I think when
This issue.
people come, this is what,
yes, his issue, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
when you are doing a house, I think you should try to design it the way it is and the way it is today, but don't say to the person that he has to come to you for every tree for the rest of his life.
So
I
maybe
think
have a
that's-
window, a sunset, like for the
Well,
next.
30 years is a normal thing for like conservation.
No, that's
easements.
Right.
insane.
Yeah.
It's not normal for houses.
It's not
Yeah.
normal for somebody
It-
who lives in a house and want, you know.
Yeah, so you want some relaxed monitoring
Well,
requirements.
And
Or a
I
sunset,
think it shouldn't be.
like 5 years or something,
Yeah,
you're
something
saying,
like that.
because then, why are we gonna come back in 25 years and say, what, that tree died and you didn't replace it?
Exactly.
You know.
But I also
I
like,
can
I
see
mean, I
that.
apologize, this is a little bit of a selfish view for
That's
me,
why you're here.
but, and this is, I don't know if this is wrong or right, I mean, it was just like a creative brainstorm, we'll call it, which is, you know, there, like, if I am a longtime resident of Weston and I wanna rebuild my home, you know, having some type of provision where if construction is finished and I'm there 12 months later, that like it can be a shorter period of time if it's not being basically built just solely for the purpose of generating profit, right?
Well,
There's
that's a tax,
Yeah, I don't
we
think you
can't
can
do
do that.
anything about that.
No, I'm not talking about taxing anything, I'm talking about the
Yeah.
length of site, no, the length
That's
of site
oversight.
plan, the
No,
length
because
of,
the people
the length of site plan review.
Okay.
The length of site plan review being diminished for people that own and occupy the premise versus, you know, people that are moving into town, have no idea what Weston is like, what the character of Weston is like, right? So there's a big difference if you're selling a brand new property to someone, right, that is moving here from Miami and they have no idea anything about Weston. And then
Length of jurisdiction.
12 months later, right, they might go completely do things that maybe after they get to know their neighbors, they won't do. But if you've been a long-time resident and you're not planning on just building this house and selling it for profit, you should not have to forfeit rights for 5 years that you had 12 months ago, right? To me, that's a problem. If I'm moving into a brand new home, I never had rights on that plot of land, right? But if I had certain rights on a plot of land, I think it's okay to let things settle down for a while, but saying that I have to sacrifice those rights now because
But no,
That's a
but
gray area,
come on,
that's
that's,
a tricky one.
You're not winning people over on it.
I'm not trying to win, I understand why you don't like it.
And then
no,
they'll just sell it to somebody
No.
else and it's just people.
Josh,
Exactly.
They'll buy it
Josh,
elsewhere.
this is.
No, who's
Nice try,
they?
Josh.
No, I don't understand.
The people who, if certain rules apply to people who just got there relative to people that have been here for a long time, the people that just got here won't feel welcome.
We'll pull up the bridge.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay, it's a try.
Right, I mean, look,
No, but
then the alternative is like, explain to me why when I'm
No,
doing
we'll
like,
brainstorm
certain-
on relaxing
like-
monitoring.
Yeah, yeah,
We'll
yeah.
brainstorm.
But I do think that it's not entirely inappropriate to have an extended monitoring on properties in certain circumstances, right? I
Josh,
don't-
one thing that I want to tell you, it's not that we do not like it, it's a perception of every non-builder always, oh, I know, if you don't like it, you make less
It
money.
has
or
nothing
you're-
to do with the builders. It doesn't cost you any more money at all.
Exactly, exactly.
It has to do
None
with
of
the fact
this
that people that are
costs us
moving into
more.
town have no idea what it means to be in Weston, what the character of the town is, so there is a justifiable interest in having a slightly, and maybe you can reduce the burden of what that review is, I don't know, but I certainly think it warrants a discussion.
Except most of the time when somebody wants to move into this kind of town versus downtown, or Brookline, they want bucolic, they want this, you know, they already know where they're going. They kind of know that they want the kind of town that doesn't have a commercial center.
Right, right.
That doesn't have this, you know, they're moving into a town that they kind of like, right? So it's not because they're just being dropped here from their airplane. They usually know where they're going.
Or their corporate reload center.
My point
Weston
is-
has the best
My
schools.
point is that there are other
That's-
tools that I haven't heard
Yeah.
discussed as it relates to how long site plan review exists, and there is a big difference when you are an existing landowner doing work on your current property, and you have to accept new restrictions, than if you are a
Yeah, but
new
it's
landowner.
motivation, it's just a
Right,
motivation.
Well, we
it's
can-
not just a
That's something we
motivation,
can look at, I
it's
think it's
it's a
tricky
problem, it's a
gray
function of
area.
property rights.
So the only way you can fix
So I wanna
that
conclude.
is the way
Yeah. Let your sheet
Newton,
finish.
Oak Hill, whatever that area fixed it. They put a 1-year restriction.
I have an idea for you.
We've done that, oh,
You
okay.
you can say that site plan review lasts for 5 years, but if the deed hasn't transferred since the building has been
They're gonna
constructed, it
object to
expires
that.
after 12 months. They may object to it, but there is other ways that you can do it.
We just want to welcome new members as well
Yeah,
as old
that's
members.
Okay, so I think we should continue to follow 2 tracks. One is the more strategic track of saying, hey, what do we do largely with the bylaw? And is the bylaw worth reconsidering some adjustments to the bylaw? And then we should work on making the planning board more efficient and work on site plan reviews. Is that okay?
So on
And
the,
on the strategic matter, I want to go back and look at some more data and encourage you, Mai, to look at some more data. And we'll get back together and reveal some thoughts to you. And if you guys have other data, that's good too. And what should we do on the second?
The second.
On improvements to the planning board.
so while you're considering the ideas of your review
Yeah,
time, right? The way Newton dealt with it in a certain area is they put a 1-year moratorium on anybody who buys a new property. And
So you buy it and you can't touch it for a
you
year?
cannot do a review of this kind for a year.
Wow.
So that
Property
deals
rights
with,
people like Joshua.
so
they're
that
pretty
deals with, no,
apoplectic.
I'm just telling you, that
It's not
deals
property
with,
rights,
we're talking
per se.
about,
There's a balance.
we're talking about a review that, you know, makes, whatever it is that you're trying to avoid, you as a person who's lived there for a year already have no issue.
Exactly.
You understand? So it's basically, it's your, but it applies equally to, you know, it's not,
It just, I mean, for me, it just boils down to not disincenting people from rebuilding modest homes on their own land.
yes.
That's
right.
all I really care about. So, if, like, part of that is sacrificing
yeah,
certain
but the
rights that you
person who
have.
moves in here from Florida might also want to rebuild on a small house. and
Yes,
all.
exactly.
So it makes no sense.
Yes,
It's
but,
just-
but then it wouldn't apply to them, because they purchased the plot, they build it, and then they live there, and the restriction would
but-
still come off.
What I'm saying is, so you're saying it's looking forward?
Yeah,
It's all about
forward-looking.
monitoring. It's all about
It's all
monitoring.
about monitoring moving forward.
His
It's not about,
He's
like,
worried about the monitoring. Half of his
I'm worried about people that own land
Right.
having rules,
In
very
perpetuity.
stringent
Yeah,
rules of
so
perpetuity
here's
applied.
how we're going to go around this. I'm just telling you how I'm going to go around this, not that I do, but.
Great, so we'll see you on email,
Thank
thanks.
you very much.
You
for
build
your
a
time.
house,
Yeah.
you rent it for 2 years, and you sell it.
Right.
But it's gonna
That's it.
totally affect property value.
It,
You gotta be
it's
super
horrible,
careful
it's
about
horrible. Don't do
that.
it.
I know it's hard to imagine because you're not, you know, in the buying and selling mode. You're
Yeah,
here
it's
and
really
hoping to
bad.
stay.
My startup is all about the buying and selling mode. I'm very, very into it.
But not in real estate.
Right.
It is, it's a fintech company.
Oh,
Have you ever heard of Ligris? the law
Yeah,
firm
law
Libris.
firm, yeah.
My co-founder's Costa Libris, founder of Libris.
Wow.
So I mean, like I have opinions on it. I just am not gonna profit from. I profit from volume, not price.
I think what we should do on this.
Well, we just wanna maintain
Yeah.
everyone
Chew on
having
those
a
improvements.
feel.
I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, of course, but like there is
Okay, yeah.
there is a
Bigger
reality
set of
that
improvements.
So,
if
Okay,
people
what do you think of that?
have concerns,
Yeah.
that there is compromise
Yeah,
and there is a
Mark
way
wanted
to
to come this
preserve
time, right?
property
So-
rights
Like, I
of
don't wanna have a
existing
big
property
conversation
owners
with everybody,
and
but I'd like
offsetting
to have a small
a little bit
conversation
for
with
some of the
people. Is that
benefit
fair?
that
Exactly,
people are
yeah.
looking for.
Yeah, exactly.
If
Oh, okay,
you
so
are
I
asking
wanna
people
talk
to
about
some of the
some-
restrictions that you're gonna have,
What can we do?
right, it's a lot different
Side
than
section issues.
having a home
Okay,
burn
okay,
down, for
got it.
example, that just happened
What
to
are we
burn
doing
down for
that
me.
you think is
These
over-
people had
could
no
be
site
over-
plan
Well, don't
obligations,
tell them.
but now when they're
Ask
rebuilding,
them
they're
to come
going
to
to.
us.
Yeah,
There's all
yeah,
sorts of
yeah, don't give
examples
them
where you have
the-
to
Oh, no,
occupy
I
these
wanna
different
hear fresh
things
ideas.
on
Exactly.
property that
Yeah.
they
Let's see
didn't
them
have to
in-
deal with when
Well,
they
how
Are there
acquired
more?
it.
Can we get like
Exception. They don't.
5,
it's
7,
not
whatever?
exception.
I don't know about
So
5,
it's
7, but we
maintain
can,
that.
I mean, I know
Okay.
Was
already
it?
two.
Yeah, I don't know, I bet, I mean,
So they
I
would
think
have
that
to-
too, I mean, I think,
But I-
you know,
but
we
they-
could
they're
get
probably gonna have to now.
Rio in, the guy who did 10
Right,
Sudbury.
right, right.
Okay.
And I know like
That's a
already,
really good question.
Mark
Well,
Chaplin
there's,
said he
there's a
wanted to
house
talk.
fire
Okay.
multi-street.
And then I
and
probably
those
asked Pete
people
Barsamian
had
too.
different
How long
preferences.
ago?
So maybe next, a Tuesday at 2 AM, 2 PM.
10 years?
Yeah.
It was a tough meeting,
You're not posting this video online, are you?
Okay.
No traffic at least.
Okay, I was a
Let me
little too.
chew on the data and we'll
What
have
I
an
was saying
email
about the
that
data was
can
more
go around.
disparaging
We
than
can
our
talk a
10
little bit
minutes
about
today.
what slicing and dicing we might take.
Okay,
That's
yeah.
why,
I'm a team
Yeah.
player.
that's why I like
The
Concom,
numbers
because we don't
changed
have
on me, I
videos.
didn't know.
Like,
So, yeah, well,
I have not
I looked at one
looked
error,
at
it actually
person
wasn't one that Chelsea
by-
brought up, it was one error I had made when we were going through it and we were like,
Oh, okay.
doing the, like, when we were doing the one for the quick calcs,
Yes, right.
that was one that came up.
Right.
Any of my, like, what I was saying about the data was not meant to be a personal attack on you, like, I felt like it
Oh.
came off far more.
It did, it
It
did.